Thank you, councillors. Almighty God, we, the representatives of the citizens of the City of Brisbane, are assembled here to strive and care for the welfare of our city and all its people. Lord, we ask that you guide us in the decisions we make here today. Amen. We acknowledge this country and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders as traditional custodians, their language, songs and dance. We pay respect to elders, past, present and emerging. May we continue to peacefully walk together in respect and in caring for this country and one another. Please be seated. I declare the meeting open. Are there any apologies? Councillor Landers.
Mr Chair, I advise that Councillor Marx, Councillor Owen, Councillor Cunningham and Councillor Matic will be absent today, and I move that they be granted a leave of absence from the meeting.
Seconded.
Thank you. It has been moved by Councillor Landers and seconded by Councillor Hutton that Councillors Marx, Owen, Cunningham and Matic be granted leaves of absence from today's meeting. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Confirmation of minutes, please.
Mr Chair, I move that the minutes of the 4,689th meeting held on Tuesday, 23rd of August 2022 be received, taken as read and confirmed.
Seconded.
Thank you. It has been moved by Councillor Landers and seconded by Councillor Hutton that the minutes of the 4,689th meeting of Council held on the 23rd of August 2022 be received, taken as read and confirmed. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Councillors, there's no public participant today. Are there any questions of the Lord Mayor or a Civic Cabinet Chair of any of the standing committees? Councillor Adaman.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to the Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, following the 2022 flood event, the Queensland Reconstruction Authority has been working to deliver the voluntary home buyback scheme. Can you please update the Chamber on the latest in this program, including Council's involvement to date?
Lord Mayor.
Thank you, through you, Mr Chair, to Councillor Adaman for the question. And I know it's a question which all councillors will no doubt have an interest in. We saw, following the flood earlier this year, an aligning of the planets where for the very first time all three levels of government committed towards two programs. First of all, a renewed flood buyback program, but also secondly to the Resilient
Councillor
Homes...
Johnston, please.
The Resilient Homes program. And so all three levels of government on board for both of those. Now, the state and federal government have committed $741 million in total, but obviously that funding has to be spread across quite a large area because it is not just for Brisbane, it is for the state of Queensland and those flood affected areas in other councils as well. And so we have been working with the state government and in particular the Queensland Reconstruction Authority on how this program might work. Obviously we are
Councillor
all interested.
Johnston. We
are all interested in how it might work. And today I can confirm that just in the last 7 days, so in the last week, we have received the first payment of funding for the flood buyback scheme, and that is a payment of $50 million. And so the way it will work is that the state government sets the criteria and the eligibility, but they then give money to local councils to administer the scheme in terms of running the acquisition process. Now, to be very clear, and it was asked of me a number of times, this is not a resumption process. This is not councils resuming homes. This is a voluntary buyback scheme. And so what has happened at this point in time is the state government has called for registrations of interest for buyback. At this point in time, we have been advised of 171 applications for buyback in the Brisbane City Council local government area. Now, obviously, if you start doing the math and you think about how much it might cost to buy back a home with property values and market values as they are, you start to realise that that then equates to quite a significant amount of money. So we have received the initial payment of $50 million. We have also been advised that there are 16 properties that have been approved for us to proceed forward, and so we are in the process now today and over the coming days of making contact with those first 16 properties to start the process. Now, obviously there'll be many people saying, well, you know, how quickly will this happen? as with any property negotiation that happens, this will require council and the owner to come to an agreement on what the purchase price will be. And so there will be some toing and froing on the properties, and there are many people who have registered for this buyback program who, through this negotiation process, may or may not say yes when it comes to signing the dotted line. So we'll initiate that process now. We'll be starting the first tranche of acquisitions, and those acquisitions will be happening in many different suburbs, but particularly ones that won't surprise you in those heavily flood-affected areas. And so we'll see acquisitions happening in Windsor, Rockley, Oxley, Clayfield, quite a few in Windsor actually, another one in Hurston, Boondall, Urong-Pilly, Archerfield, Carina, and that's just the first tranche. So as soon as the state government signs off on the next tranche of properties, we'll get on with talking to those people as well. And so what we'll do here is we'll make sure that we'll progress this as quickly as possible, but obviously we rely on the state government notifying of which properties are eligible for this program. So we're keen to get on with it. We will be getting on with it. We've made that initial contact, or will be over the coming days with the owners, and then we'll be progressing from there. So hopefully we get these issues resolved quickly, but I would also point out that, well, some people have suggested a lot in this place that the flood buyback is some kind of silver bullet. There were 23,000 properties in Brisbane that were flooded, yet the state government received 171 applications for buyback. So you can tell by that response alone that there are many people that were flooded that do not want us to buy back their home.
That's wrong.
Many people.
That's wrong.
Many people. So this is a fraction of the properties that were flooded. And so this is just one suite of many responses to natural disasters and floods that we can use, but it is by no means a silver bullet. And that goes for virtually every component of our response, whether it's the flood resilient homes, the flood buyback,
your
drainage improvements.
Time has expired.
Thank you.
Further questions? Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks very much, Chair. My question is to the Lord Mayor. Tomorrow, 12 recommendations from the Brisbane City Council 2022 flood review are due. We know one of the biggest issues for people who were affected by creek flooding in February this year was a lack of warning and instructions on how to evacuate. You said following the release of your flood review that you wanted more people signed up to Council's controlled early warning system. Back in February, just 14% of Brisbane residents were signed up to the system. How many residents are signed up today?
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Look, it is positive that the Leader of the Opposition thinks it's a good thing that people are signed up to our council warning service. The Severe Weather Warning Alert Service that we run, otherwise known as Weather Zone, or operated by a group called Weather Zone, that's the system that quickly and effectively sent out more than 2.7 million messages in the days preceding the flood and during the flood earlier this year. This is distinct to the early warning alert system, which is a national system. This is a voluntary system that we are talking about. And so with any voluntary system, obviously the challenge is to get people signed up to that and to encourage them to to understand the benefits of signing up. More people signed up in the lead up to summer is exactly what we want to see. And so we will be, from tomorrow, in fact, kicking off a major campaign with the community to encourage them to sign up to our alert service, the Brisbane Severe Weather Alert Service. And that will not just be encouraging people to get access to that information, we'll be incentivising it as well. And so as part of that incentivisation, we've worked with some tourism operators in southeast Queensland to provide some prizes so that people that sign up to this alert service in the month of September, starting tomorrow, go into the draw to win some really fantastic prizes. And they include things like a tourism opportunity out at Tangalooma, including several nights accommodation.
Point of order.
They include...
Point of order to you, Councillor Cassidy.
Yeah, it's actually very fascinating and loving this information. But the question was how many residents are signed up today to the early warning system.
I think Lord Mayor is responding to the bulk of your question. There was a specific question there, Lord Mayor, about the number of people who have signed up. Yeah,
and so what I was pointing out is that from tomorrow, a major public campaign will begin to get people signed up in the lead up to the next storm season. So this is something... And I wonder what Councillor Cassidy has done to encourage people to sign up, other than playing cheap politics. I wonder. Oh, he put it in his e-news.
Councillor...
He put it on his Facebook page. 3 people got access to that.
Order, councillors.
Branch members got access to that one.
Excuse me, Lord Mayor. Order. Councillor Cassidy, please. Allow the answer to be heard in silence.
Thank you, Mr Chair. We can all relax. He put it on his Facebook page. We can all relax.
Councillor Strunk.
Look, it's quite clear that despite their distaste for living in Brisbane, they don't read it.
No, that's right.
Because every single household in Brisbane is regularly reminded.
Councillor Cassidy.
I'd love to hear how successful his campaign in living in Brisbane has been. If you could just tell us how many people are currently signed up to Council's controlled early warning system. That was the question.
Yeah, and it relates to the campaign that's underway to get more people to sign up. The Lord Mayor is answering the Lord Mayor is answering the question.
Point of order.
Point of order to you, Councillor.
You just said that was related to my question about a campaign. It wasn't. My question was specifically how many residents have signed up to that. What the Lord Mayor says he can say, but you can't say that that is relating to my question, Chair.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Do you want to add to your answer?
Yeah, for sure. As you know, Mr Chair, I have 5 minutes, and it's important for context that I explain to councillors that as of tomorrow, we're beginning a major campaign in the lead up to summer to get people signed up. And so what we saw is a figure in February. So the sign-ups or the people registered in February were 165,697. And as of yesterday, the sign-ups were 173,039, but that's before our major campaign. And so... yeah, that's right. Look, I'm sure we can attribute the increase to Jared's Facebook page. I'm sure. It's got nothing to do...
Please refer to councillors by their full title, please.
Councillor. It's got nothing to do with the fact that it has been in Living in Brisbane, it has been in across councillors' social media, in various other channels. And as...
Councillor Cassidy, please.
And as of tomorrow, we're beginning a major campaign, which I encourage the opposition councillors to support rather than criticise, because it is important that everyone gets behind this and everyone understands the importance of signing up. But also, in this case, we are quite clearly incentivising the program to make sure that more people sign up and that it's not only of interest in terms of natural disasters, but also you know, when it comes to things like high tides that happen from time to time, and the summer storms that come in a short, sharp basis across Brisbane on a regular basis. And so it is good that we'll be kicking that off tomorrow for the entire month of September. We look forward to seeing even more people sign up to this great service. And certainly what I would encourage councillors across the political spectrum to encourage the community to sign up to this system.
Your time has expired. Further questions? Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Mr Chair. My question is to the Acting Chair of the City Standards Committee, Councillor Toomey. Councillor Toomey, Labor councillors continue to make false claims about footpaths. Can you highlight for the Chamber's Labor's hypocrisy when it comes to footpaths and provide them advice on how to deliver new footpaths for their wards?
Councillor Toomey.
Thank you, Chair, and can I thank Councillor Hammond for the question. And I note with interest your strong track record in delivering footpaths to the Marchant ward, and I thank you for that. And you're right in saying that questions on notice today, the response to Councillor Griffith's questions, highlights Labor's hypocrisy.
Councillor Strunk.
You were the one who had the highest performance last financial year, along with councillors Allen, Cunningham and McLaughlin, who have been very busy delivering on residents' requests for new footpaths. So it was quite a shock to see just how little Labor councillors have been doing when it comes to building new footpaths. Their record, especially shocking given their public claims about council not delivering enough footpaths. A mistruth they have been peddling for many, many years. Only last weekend they were complaining about not enough footpaths being delivered. Surprise to no one, really. Well, it has been shown clearly today that their claims are entirely false. More than that, today's response shows that when it comes to new footpaths, some Labor councillors have not even spent, anyone guess, a single cent on new footpaths in their wards. I'm struggling with the facts before me, Councillor Allen. I'm truly struggling. And as Councillor Cook,
please.
I'll just repeat it for Councillor Strunks because I know he's speaking, he can't hear. As Councillor Cook likes to say, a budget is about values and priorities. Values and priorities. And you know, there is some truth in that, values and priorities. So let's have a look at the values and priorities of Labor councillors. When it comes to spending more than $500,000 of funds that are allocated to them by the Lord Mayor for projects and ward projects in their ward. There's only one Labor councillor who managed to really deliver new footpaths last financial year, and that was Councillor Griffiths. Can we have a round of applause for Councillor Griffiths, please? Councillor Griffiths was way above all the others. He prioritised 6 new footpaths to be delivered in his ward. So we congratulate Councillor Griffiths on that. And credit where credit is due, Councillor Griffiths worked with the community to get support for, to install new footpaths and work with council officers to get them built. Now, I suspect this has led the councillor to lodge his question on notice, which is being responded to today in the papers. He must sit in caucus and oppose this dishonest Labor strategy to say only 18 new footpaths, 18 new footpaths are being delivered when he ensured 6 were delivered in the Maruka ward alone. And these figures published today are indeed shocking. So let's run through them. When it comes to the priority projects for footpaths in the Morningside ward, Councillor Cook came up with one, not even one, sorry, footpath delivered last financial year. Yes, thank you, Councillor Wines, for these actions. Yeah. I could have shortened that sentence by just saying 0, but yeah. My apologies for that. But she wasn't alone. Councillor Strunk, who we've heard this afternoon interjecting, saying not one footpath has been delivered in his ward. Who's meant to deliver them? Councillor Strunk. He couldn't manage to find a footpath to deliver at all last financial year. Not one. Not one.
Fewer than one?
It was 0. It was 0. It was 0. So in the footpath race, we have Councillor Cook at 0 and we have Councillor Strunk at 0. That's a pretty clear statement on their values and their priorities to me. 0. Councillor Cumming managed to do a little better. He worked with council officers to build one single footpath at Natasha Street in Wynnum West. Well done, Councillor.
Councillor Toomey, your time has expired.
That's a shame.
Further questions? Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. My question is to the Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, during the February 22 flood event, this council had only 2 designated evacuation centres set up for residents. These centres were inaccessible for many residents with numerous roads cut. You have only funded 2 full-time positions in relation to the disaster resilience team who are looking into these situations. Can you advise how many additional evacuation centres we will have in the future and where they will be located?
Thank you. Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Well, first of all, I don't accept the claim that there's only 2 people associated with this particular project. We have a well-funded and resourced disaster resilience team or city resilience team. So the claim on that, I would encourage everyone to treat with scepticism because we know time and time again that Labor councillors and opposition councillors come in here and they make completely false claims. When it comes to evacuation centres, we are working hard on a program which will see us very well prepared as we go into the next storm season, and that will include a system of both formal evacuation centres but also community facilities and community hubs that can also be stood up to provide local support as well. And so we know that there are many organisations who are keen to help, and so there is a role for them in this. Now, not all of those organisations will have beds for people to stay in overnight. There will be those formal evacuation centres, but there will also be a network of community hubs as well. And so we are working with organisations that are interested. We've already been through and scoped out and engaged with 39 different locations across the city. Now, I'm not saying that there'll be 39 evacuation centres, but these are the organisations that we're approaching to see whether they're interested in assisting and supporting our efforts and whether they'd be suitable to be either an evacuation centre or a community hub. And so we're working on that process now. What I can say, though, is that there will be additional evacuation centres compared to the 2022 flood. And so, you know, there will be more centres made available, and that's what I can confirm at this point in time. But in terms of the specific locations, we're going through the process to lock those in, and we'll be sure to let people know as soon as that process is finalised. But it's something like the many things we've been working on since the flood, that is a strong focus as part of our flood recovery, resilience and rebuilding program, and it's why we invested such a significant part of the recent budget in this process. It's why that over the coming years there is $500 million plus that's been allocated to these activities, and that includes a myriad of different components that we're working on. So thank you for Councillor Griffiths for your recent interest in this matter. It's something we've been working on, and we didn't need a question for you to prompt us to work on this matter.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Further questions? Councillor Mackay.
Thanks, Chair.
Excuse me, Councillor Johnston. Councillor Mackay, you have the floor.
Thanks, Chair. My question is to the Chair of the Environment, Parks and Sustainability Committee, Councillor Davis. Councillor Davis, last week it was announced that the Queensland Government is looking at alternative options for a new Inner West primary school. Can you please remind the Chamber of the Schrinner Council's efforts in securing this outcome for the Inner West community?
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and through you, I thank Councillor Mackay for the question, because I know how hard Councillor Mackay has worked with his local community to ensure that their voice was heard regarding the location of the proposed new primary school. And Mr Chair, there have been concerns as far back as 2020 when the state first started investigating the Toowong and Indooroopilly areas for a location, and those concerns became even greater when residents became aware that the former Toowong Bowls Club site at Perrin Park was shaping up as the preferred option. Mr Chair, Councillor Mackay has continued to be a very strong advocate for his residents through this journey, and it's been his dogged efforts in highlighting their very real concerns that in no small way has led to the Education Minister, Grace announcing last week that her department was reconsidering the decision. Mr Chair, in February, I moved a motion in Council, seconded by Councillor Mackay, calling on the State Government to first purchase and then gift at no cost to Council new land to offset the land required for the new school. During the debate, the value of education to the community was recognised, that the state has a role in delivering educational facilities, and a new primary school responded to the increased demand. However, this side of the chamber made it very clear that ratepayers and residents should not have their green spaces treated as a land bank by the Department of Education. And whilst the debate centred around the proposition that the state government should step up, identify and gift to Council the equivalent green space to account for the loss the construction of a new school would mean, Councillor Mackay, on behalf of his residents, raised a range of issues about the inappropriateness of the parent park location option. And these concerns included potential traffic and congestion impacts to the local area and the proximity to the nearby sewage plant. Not to mention the Flying Fox camp along Toowong Creek, which may present an ongoing risk if there was an increase in usage and interactions with this native fauna. And that the precinct also houses our Perrin Park depot, which provides a significant footprint in the western suburbs for our public space operations, as well as the state emergency services teams that operate from it. But the reference he made to the fact that the former Toowong Bowls Club being built in a flood zone and was so impacted from the 2011 floods that they were unable to recover, supported the local community's position that a new school should not be built on that site. Councillor Mackay and the residents were right to have been concerned about the flooding impacts to the parkland, because in February, when the city experienced a weather event and flooding like no other, Perrin Park was significantly impacted, with 2 metres of floodwater recorded on the site. I wrote directly to the Minister after the debate to ensure that our concerns were highlighted, but disappointingly, there was no response or acknowledgement from the Minister. Mr Chair, some may recall that the nearby Milton State School was heavily impacted by the 2011 flood, and although it was built to be flood resilient, the school was cut off by flood waters in 2022. With Perrin Park inundated with over 2 metres of flood waters, it would likely be the same scenario, a flood resilient building that could not be accessed. The Education Minister herself reflected upon this last week in her announcement and called it disastrous flooding. Only now has the Minister asked the Education Department to carry out further due diligence regarding whether Perrin Park remains the best site. Furthermore, the Minister last week acknowledged that through the consultation process that the Inner West community had indicated that they were not supportive of the construction of the new school at that location. Having said that, it is a great outcome that we have been able to save this land for the Toowong community, and I do thank the State Government for finally listening to the concerns raised. I know that Councillor Mackay will continue to advocate for his local community on this matter. Thank you, Mr Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Saranganathan.
Thanks, Chair. My question is to the Mayor. Lord Mayor, it's 2022 and the West End Library still doesn't have a publicly available toilet at all. There's just no toilet for the West End Library. There's a small, very old toilet at the top of an old flight of stairs that's available to staff only. Obviously, that's not wheelchair accessible, and if ever a librarian with impaired mobility wanted to work at that facility, they wouldn't be able to, because there's no disability accessible toilet for staff either. So we have a library building with no toilets for the general public and no wheelchair accessible toilets for staff or members of the public. So my question to you is that if you have the money for all these big road widening projects, if you have the money for any number of other vanity projects across the city, why has your administration still not allocated any funding to give the West End Library a toilet?
Lord Mayor.
Well, the councillor for the Gabba ward would be well aware that there was an opportunity just recently that came up to have a brand new West End Library. It was in a building that was proposed by ARIA that he opposed. The greenest building in the world, fact. And you remember that one? Remember that one? The greenest building in the world with 1,000 trees, with a new library at the base of it, and he opposed it. So let's not talk about priorities here, because we can see what the priorities of this local councillor are, and that is opposing the construction of new homes and the construction of new libraries in his ward. And so this is a question that is asked with forked tongue, and it is one that you can't take the local councillor seriously on, because the local community could have had a brand spanking new library.
Councillor
Sri opposed it.
Point of order.
I've asked the Mayor a question in good faith, and the Mayor knows very well that there was no serious proposal for a council-funded library on that ARIA site. So I'd ask him...
Councillor, you're now debating your point of order.
So I'd ask him to reflect on whether the term forked tongue is appropriate language in this chamber, and whether he could just answer the question. So it's a point of order about both relevance and about appropriate language in this chamber.
There's been a Lord Mayor challenge to that expression. Would you like to alter it, please?
No, not at all. I think that it's quite clear that Councillor Sri Ranganathan says that he cares about certain things, but when he's got the opportunity to actually support certain things, he doesn't. And whether that's green and sustainable buildings with 1,000 trees on them, or a new public library in his ward, he opposed it. And so I would suggest that there's a fair degree of hypocrisy in this question. And I would also suggest that Councillor Sri Ranganathan has a really good ability to support the provision of more housing in his ward as well, which he says he cares about.
Point of order.
And instead
Point of order to you, Councillor Sri Ranganathan.
On relevance, the question was, when is West End Library, the existing West End Library, when is it getting a toilet for the public to use?
To the question, Lord Mayor.
The existing West End Library is quite clearly not big enough to meet the future needs of the community, which is why we have identified that West End needs a new library. And so when someone comes forward with a proposal to build the world's greenest building with 1,000 trees and includes a public library at the base, and then Councillor Sri Ranganathan opposes that.
Point of order, Chair.
Again, read into that what you will.
Again, on relevance, the question is, when is the West End Library building getting a new toilet? The Mayor is not answering the question. He's talking about a private development proposal in another suburb. That's the suburb of South Brisbane. That's not even the same suburb.
Lord Mayor, if you can confine the answer to the particular
Mr Chair,
library.
every suburb needs a library now. There are 190 suburbs in Brisbane. Apparently they all need a library, according to Councillor for the Gabba ward. The reality is the building that I was talking about serves the same community that the West End Library does. I don't know, can I have a show of hands? Do other councillors have a library in every suburb? No? I know that those councillors opposite have a very clear history of shutting down libraries. We remember that, don't they? They shut down libraries, they reduced the number of libraries. We have never done that. All we have done is invest in libraries right across the city.
Excuse me, Lord Mayor.
Right across the city.
Point of order to you,
You're being
Councillor
very
Sri Ranganathan.
lenient with the Mayor here. The question was very specific about when the West End Library will get a toilet, and you are not holding him to the point. It's a simple question. I should get a straightforward answer.
Lord Mayor, to the question.
Councillor Sri Ranganathan may want a new toilet for an inadequate library, but we want a new library. Yeah, that's right. That's what we want. That's our priority. And so he may be happy to settle for second best while he continues to oppose the construction of green buildings and new homes in his ward and new libraries now. Add that to the list. But we want to see the investment in a new library. That's right. A new library. And so that is our priority for his local residents, and certainly adding a different toilet to what is quite clearly a small library that is not suitable for the growth of the community is not the outcome that we'd like to see. We'd like to see a new library, which is why it is in the LGIP. You know that document that he likes to criticise? There's a new library in there for his ward. And so that's the outcome we would like to see. And of course, because we are interested in making sure that we drive value for ratepayers' money, and if we can provide a new library in partnership with private funding, as was proposed here, then that could be a really good outcome that will help cut the costs down for the people of Brisbane, because you get more when it comes to this sort of arrangement. This is the smart way of doing things. This is the way that we built the library out at Wynnum. You remember that fantastic new library that was delivered by CBIC? That's right. There was a Woolworths down below and a library up above. Fantastic new facility. That's the kind of facility that could be delivered potentially in Councillor Sri Ranganathan's ward if he opened his mind to the possibilities, if he opened his eyes and stopped opposing development.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Your time has expired. Councillor Atwood.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to the Acting Chair of the City Standards Committee, Councillor Toomey. Councillor Toomey, spring cleaning will shortly begin across Brisbane, and with the Schrinner Council is making it easier for residents to dispose of their household waste. Can you please update the Chamber what offers are being made available at our resource recovery centres this coming September?
Councillor Toomey.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and can I also thank Councillor Atwood for the question.
Excuse me, Councillor. Conversations outside, please. Thank you. Continue, Councillor Toomey.
Thank you, Chair. Under the leadership of the Lord Mayor, our city has achieved a lot to create a clean and green city for future generations. We are particularly proud of the achievements we've made in the waste and resource recovery space. Together with our residents, we have worked hard to reduce the amount of green waste, food and household items going into landfill each year. Free hazard waste and free green waste drop-off days at Council's 4 resource recovery centres are popular events that are offered to the residents of Brisbane. Councillor Atwood, through you, Chair, you will be pleased to know that the next free drop-off for unwanted hazardous waste will be this Saturday, the 3rd of September, at the Chandler Resource Recovery Centre from 7:30 a.m. until 3:30 p.m. If you cannot make it that day, the next opportunity will be Saturday the 3rd of December at the Nudgee Resource Recovery Centre out in Councillor Allen's ward. Household hazardous waste includes items such as bleach, garden and pool chemicals, ink cartridges, which I've noted that Councillor Wine says we now put the toner ink into our roads, road surfaces, so thank you very much for that initiative. Batteries and cleaning solvents. It's particularly important that these items are disposed of appropriately due to the risk that they pose to the community and to the environment. Disposing of hazardous materials in toilets, sinks, general waste or recycling bins are not safe, and they can be flammable, corrosive and toxic. Residents should check Council's website for details and acceptable items and litre containers, there are limits. Mr Chair, sometimes a big garden clean-up can create a lot of waste, and a free tipping weekend makes it quick and easy for residents of Brisbane to dispose of their green waste. This spring, on September the 10th and 11th, our free green waste tipping weekend will be at all 4 resource recovery centres, allowing residents to drive in and dispose of their green waste, including palm fronds, weeds, bark and other garden waste. Properly disposing of green waste also benefits the environment, with all green waste received turned into mulch and compost is then reused. Great initiative of this council. For those residents who may not be able to participate with those dates, we have additional free green waste tipping weekends in the September school holidays. Make sure you mark the calendars, your calendar weekends for the 17th, 18th, 24th and 25th. So that's September 17th, 18th, 24th and 25th in your diaries. Stopping green waste going into landfill and responding is part of our plan to ensure Brisbane remains clean, green and sustainable. Outside of the green waste tipping weekends, residents can use their waste vouchers to dispose of green waste for free in order for the green waste order a green waste recycling bin. As September is right around the corner, residents should jump onto Council's website to find out where their nearest resource recovery centre is. Mr Chair, it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge the passion and hard work of our officers in the Waste Resource Recovery Services branch. The officers do an amazing job in this space, and I want to thank them all for what they do each day for the residents of Brisbane. I would like to encourage councillors to promote these free tipping events, as it is a great opportunity for their residents involved in contributing to making Brisbane cleaner, greener for the future generations to come. Thank you, Mr Chair.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mr Chair. My question is for the Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, during the February floods, residents were lining up for 3 hours for sandbags in some locations. In other locations, sandbags were locked away and inaccessible. There were only a handful of sandbagging machines for the entire city. This disastrous situation was because this LNP council had no plan to deal with flooding events. Lord Mayor, have you purchased more sandbag machines and arranged more locations for sandbag collection?
Lord Mayor.
Well, Mr Chair, there's several inaccuracies in that question because we were very much going into the 2022 flood in February with a significant pile of sandbags. I'm not sure if the Labor councillors had an interest in the lead up to that event, because they certainly didn't raise this issue then. So we can only assume that they're talking with the benefit of hindsight, which is a benefit to all of us, of course, and is a benefit that has helped us when we're preparing for the next storm season. So what I can confirm is that already as of today, we have far more sandbags available and ready to go in a stockpile than we did in the 2022 event, already as of today. And we'll be announcing further details as well on that over the coming weeks. But certainly...
Excuse me, Councillor Johnston. Councillor Johnston, please.
We have enough machines for sandbags, and certainly we have already a larger stockpile of sandbags than we distributed, in fact, in the lead up to the event earlier this year. So once again, these are things that we've been working on. These are things that we're making sure are in order as we approach the next storm season, and residents can be confident that if they need access to sandbags, there will be sandbags available. And not only will be there more sandbags available than in the flood earlier this year.
Very interesting, but also, have you purchased more sandbag machines? We heard the Lord Mayor said we have enough. Presumably the answer is no. And arranged more locations for sandbag collection. What other locations?
You're now debating the point of order. Councillor Cook, the question related to the availability of sandbags in a storm. The Lord Mayor is answering the question. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
I notice the question has now changed, but I'd like Councillor Cook to point to a recommendation where it says we need more sandbagging machines, because if there was a recommendation that we need more sandbagging machines, we would have purchased more sandbagging machines. But apparently Councillor Cook knows better than...
Councillors, please, order, please. Councillor Cook. Councillor Cook, please.
And so when Councillor Cook can point to that recommendation, I'll be quite happy to apologise to her and say, oh, well, you know...
Councillor Cook! Lord Mayor. Councillor Cook, please.
We see the flood experts to my right who seem to know better than the independent De Jersey review.
There was, in fact, specific recommendations in the De Jersey review about the availability of sandbags in more locations. Councillor Cook asked very clearly if more machinery had been bought and where the additional locations would be.
Questions about the availability of sandbags. Lord Mayor.
Point of order. Do you want the question re-asked? I listened very carefully to that question. It asked how many additional sandbag machines have been purchased and where the additional locations for sandbag collection will be.
The answer is being relevant to the question, Lord Mayor.
He doesn't know what's in the review.
Well, we're hearing from the councillor who made media comment on the review before he had actually read the review. Remember that day when he made comments about the review when he hadn't actually read the review?
Councillor
Point of order.
Cassidy. Councillor Cassidy.
Point of order.
Councillor Cassidy, you are disrupting the meeting I consider you displaying unsuitable meeting conduct in accordance with section 21(4) of the meeting local law. I hereby request that you cease interjecting and conducting your unsuitable meeting conduct. You had a point of order, Councillor Johnson?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And it is relevant. I and every resident in my ward wants to know if there are additional sandbag locations. People in my ward cannot get to Darra. It's a legitimate and reasonable question, and if the Lord Mayor doesn't know, he should take it on notice so that we can communicate with our residents prior to the adverse La Nina event that is forecast by the BOM.
Thank you.
So
you're now
please
debating,
ask
you're
him
now,
to provide
Councillor,
the locations
Councillor
as per the question.
Johnston, you're now debating that point of order. The question related to the availability of sandbags in more locations. Lord Mayor, do you want to add to the answer?
Well, look, I'm not sure that the opposition councillors are interested in the answer. They're just asking political questions here. And so,
point of order.
If you're actually interested...
Point of order, Councillor Johnston.
I find that the Lord Mayor's comments about us not being interested in flood recovery to be offensive and are unsuitable meeting conduct, and I'd ask that that is withdrawn. I absolutely want to know this information and more, and I've even texted the Lord Mayor while this meeting's going on.
Johnson,
so that's unacceptable behaviour.
I don't accept your point of order, Councillor Johnson. Lord Mayor.
First of all, I didn't say that any councillor wasn't interested in the flood recovery. I said they weren't interested in hearing the answer. Okay, so don't deliberately twist around the things that I say for your own purposes. Look.
Are we finished? Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillors, that ends question time for today. Before we continue, Councillor Johnston.
I seek leave to move an urgency motion calling on the Lord Mayor to immediately release the list of locations for for sandbag collection that will be available this year in the coming storm season.
Seconded.
Councillor Johnston, as you know, to suspend standing rules with a motion, you must establish why you weren't able to put your motion forward onto the notice paper before 1 o'clock today. You have 3 minutes to establish why 9(3) of the meeting's local law couldn't be established.
Yes. Yes, I have a resident who literally yesterday asked me about this, and I don't know the answer. I thank Councillor Cara-Cook for asking the Lord Mayor the question. She is genuinely interested in trying to find out what's happening. We're not getting any answers from Brisbane City Council. It's now a month ago since I asked for the documents from the Flood Recovery Task Force, and Tim Wright, the second most senior manager of this council, his office is refusing to hand over any documents for me to review. Not a single document. I've been asking questions. Dates for the Jersey review are coming up, and we've just heard the Lord Mayor here today, unable or unwilling, or both, to answer Councillor Cook's question about where the sandbag locations are. If it is the 4 existing depots, he needs to be clear so that we and other residents of Brisbane can take steps to deal with the situation. If there are new locations that are identified, he needs to tell our community so that they can prepare. There's no point keeping secret sandbag locations so that residents of Brisbane are not prepared for the floods. And if the Lord Mayor doesn't know, he should lean over and ask the Deputy Mayor. She's not on a junket in Korea.
Point of order, Chairman.
Excuse me, Councillor Johnston.
Point of order, Chair.
Against you.
I mean, can we just take the temperature down a bit? I mean, this is it's getting a bit ridiculous here. Just, you know, it's just an urgency motion. Let's make it. Let's get on with the meeting.
Murphy, thank you for your point of order. Councillor Johnston, your debate is to establish why you are asking for a suspension of standing rules, please.
Or he can lean over and ask his infrastructure chairman, who's chairing the secret flood recovery task force, or he can text one of his 20 staff, or he can text the CEO and the 9,000 staff that are in Brisbane City Council. But how hard is it to provide a list of locations for sandbag collection one day before spring in this city, in response to a recommendation by the Jersey Review? Councillor Cara-Cook has asked a valid question that the Lord Mayor did not answer. It was a simple question. He did not provide those locations. They should be on the record now. He's had 3 minutes to check this after I've asked, and it needs to be on the record now. And this secrecy and political game playing is not good enough. Provide the locations. If they are the same as they always have been, great, we can take it from there. If there are new locations, our community needs to know so they can properly prepare. Provide the locations, Lord Mayor, as a matter of urgency right now.
Councillors, the motion before us is for the suspension of standing rules. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Councillor Johnson, will you move your motion, please?
Yes, thank you. My motion is that the Lord Mayor immediately provides the locations for sandbag collection for the City of Brisbane. I would just say, look, it's a very simple question. I want to know, residents want to know if it's the existing locations, if there are new locations, and I certainly welcome...
Point of order, Mr Chair. Is this the resolution or is this the debate? So we just need the resolution moved and seconded.
Councillor Johnson, you need to move what your motion is.
Okay. I move that the Lord Mayor immediately provides the sandbag collection locations for the City of Brisbane.
Okay. Is there a seconder?
Bag location. Seconded.
Yep.
Seconded by Councillor. So the motion has been moved by Councillor Johnston and seconded by Councillor Cook. Councillor Johnston, to your debate, please.
Yes. Thank you very much. I again want to thank Councillor Cook for asking the Lord Mayor this question, which has exposed the problems that we have with flood recovery in this city, and the problem is secrecy. I do not know why the Lord Mayor decided to politically attack councillors who are simply seeking information about where sandbag locations are in this city. We know that the existing locations, the closest one to me is Darra, which no one can get to in a flood, were inadequate. We know that Paul de Jersey, the former Supreme Court Justice and Governor of Queensland, made recommendations for additional locations for residents, but we don't know where they are. We don't know where they are. It's 6 months since the floods. Council is supposed to be providing outcomes to these recommendations pretty much from now. And we heard today that the Lord Mayor wanted to attack councillors for asking these questions rather than provide the answers. It's not complex information. If the answer had have been to Councillor Cook, it's the 4 ones and we're working on another 10, I think that we might have been understanding. But he chose not to do that, and he chose to attack Councillor Cook. And that is wrong. We just want to know what is happening with flood recovery, and we want to know what Council is doing in response to the De Jersey recommendations. And I can tell you I am asking, and this Council is blocking the release of information so that we can find out what's happening with flood recovery. And again, I say to Tim Wright and his team, release the documents that I have called for under Section 172 of the City of Brisbane Act, and stop trying to hide information about flood recovery in this city. It has been weeks and they are blocking the release of the information. And here we have the Lord Mayor doing the same thing publicly. Please provide the locations. If there are some that aren't confirmed, tell us where you're thinking about. It might even be good to get some feedback from us as local councillors who flooded about where it would be good to have them. Some pop-up sandbags would be better than the shop fronts that are filled with bloody yellow balloons down there on Adelaide Street. So council can get round and fill shop fronts up with yellow balloons, but we couldn't possibly have a pop-up sandbag location somewhere in the wards that are going to flood that we can get to. So Lord Mayor, you've had several minutes now to sort this out. Where are the locations? Provide them to us, or tell us when you will provide them. And again, thank you to Councillor Cook for asking the question, because it is an important issue, and this Lord Mayor and this Council are hiding information and they are not sharing it with us and the community, and we need transparency and accountability so that we are prepared for the storm season this year.
Thank you. Point of order, Chair. Councillor Landers.
Mr Chair, as per section 42 2B of the Meetings Local Law 2001, I move a procedural motion that the remainder of the debate on the motion now before the meeting be adjourned until the conclusion of the business of today's agenda.
Seconded.
Thank you. We have a procedural motion to move this debate until the end of today's agenda. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. No. The ayes have it.
Division. We need a division.
Thank you. We continue with the remainder of the... Oh, did you second it, Councillor Saranganathan? Sorry, I didn't hear you. Okay. The division has been called for the vote on this debate. All in favour, please say aye. Move to my left, noes to the right. Sorry, correction. Noes to the left, ayes to the right. Thank you, clerks.
Mr Chair, the ayes have it, the voting being 16 in favour and 6 against.
Thank you. This item is moved to the end of today's agenda. And Councillor Johnston, if you could circulate that motion, please, so it's on the put onto the agenda for everybody to read and see. We move on to E and C, but before we do, I'd like to acknowledge former Councillor Geraldine Knapp in the public gallery. She told me not to do so, so that's why I've done that. Thank you. Everyone, Lord Mayor, Establishment Coordination Committee report, please.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I move the report of the Establishment and Coordination Committee meeting held on Monday, 22nd of August 2022 be adopted.
Seconded.
Thank you. It has been moved by the Lord Mayor and seconded by the Deputy Mayor that the report of the Establishment and Coordination Committee meeting dated Monday, 22nd of August 2022 be adopted. Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Today we've seen a continuation of the political strategy from the opposition to ask a question and then not to listen to the answer of the question and just constantly interrupt, constantly interject, constantly interrupt. It is quite clear that they are not interested in the answer. They are not interested because they are constantly interrupting. They do not want to hear the answer. And we've seen time and time again in the past where I have answered a question, they don't listen to the answer, and they continue to perpetuate the myths and lies and mistruths that they have been perpetuating, regardless of the fact that the information is provided in this forum. Now, what I can confirm, and this is something that I would have said in the question if I wasn't continually interrupted throughout the entire question, is that we have a new way of doing things with sandbags in the lead up to the upcoming storm season. And what we're going to do for the very first time ever is we're going to have a sandbag collection during the month of September so that people can collect sandbags in advance of any potential event. Not when it's raining, not... So apparently the sandbag's available right now from Councillor Johnston. You need to tell us where they're available. Oh no, they're available now. This is how ridiculous this line of questioning is. She claims that there's sandbags available now, yet that she's demanding to know where they're available. They're on the council website, Councillor Johnston, like they always have been. But I can confirm that we have, as of the 17th of September, a Super Saturday for collection of sandbags in advance. And by that day, we will have a collection of 150,000 sandbags available for people to take. 150,000 sandbags. And so We'll get rid of that initial collection and we'll get as many of those out as possible, and then we will continually be making more. We have enough machines.
Point of order, Chair.
Councillor Swaranganathan.
This is really interesting. Will the Lord Mayor just take a quick question? I'd love to clarify something.
Lord Mayor, will you take a question?
Well, I am clarifying. So no, I won't take a question. And so on that Super Saturday, the 17th of September, we will be making sandbags available at various locations around Brisbane so that people can have them in advance, so that it's not a last-minute rush when right at the point where people are concerned about flooding, but they have them in advance. And more importantly as well, I've asked for it to be made quite clear to people, for example, through educational videos that people can easily access on the best way to use sandbags in different situations. So how to install them, how they can be used. There's a lot that we've learnt from this last event. And one of them is making sure that we can get these out early so that you don't have that situation of panic right when it's raining where everyone's rushing to get them. They'll have them in advance. People already know this year the areas that could be potentially subject to flooding. They know it because they've been through it. And in those areas, we'll be encouraging people to get access to sandbags early. Now, to put it in perspective, across the entire flood event that we had earlier this year, there were 177,000 sandbags distributed. So already, as of mid-September, we will have 150,000, the vast bulk of what was distributed during the entire flood event earlier this year. And that's not it. We don't just stop making sandbags at that point. We continue the process so that we can replenish the stockpile and have even more available.
Will the Mayor just take a quick question?
No. And so we will make sure that once we get sandbags out in that Super Saturday, that we keep replenishing the stocks and that we also have more locations available as well. And so the other thing I wanted to point out is that every flood event, every storm event is different. I think you can assume that we will not have the same flood event that we had earlier this year next year or this summer. It will be different. It will be different if it happens. And so there will be flood events that involve river flooding. There could be flood events that involve creek flooding. There could be different combinations. But to have the same repetition of the same weather pattern is very highly unlikely. It would be, if it happens again, a different kind of event. And we saw that between 2011 and 2022. And we saw that difference between 1974 and 2011. They are all different events. And we're making sure that we've got all of the bases covered when it comes to preparedness. And that includes getting the sandbags out early. And this is the first time we would have done this on a very large scale like this. Why? Because we have learnt lessons from the 2022 flood and we're doing things differently. And so opposition councillors can try and score political points all they like, but we have already amassed a stockpile of 150,000 sandbags, comparing to the total of 177,000 that was distributed across the entire event earlier this year. So the suggestion that, that we don't have enough machines, I'm not aware of that claim. I am not aware of that claim. And so that's something that I'm happy to have verified by the people that know, but certainly no one has said to me that you must buy more machines for the next. It's things need to be done differently, lessons need to be learned, but we have already a massive stockpile amassed and we'll be getting that out to the community, to the people that need it. And we'll also be making sure that people are better informed on how to use sandbags effectively. Because this is, one of the important responses. And as I said earlier, there is no single silver bullet to the issue of flooding in Brisbane. There are multiple strategies and we are taking all of them seriously. We are responding to all of them. We've done an incredible amount of work to this point and that work will continue. And you'll see week after week going forward, more information being released about different aspects of our flood preparedness as soon as it becomes ready. But there's been a lot of work done. The issue of evacuation centres was raised, and as I mentioned, we've already been in touch with 39 different organisations to talk about opportunities for additional evacuation centres or community hubs. And so we are doing the work. That's right. And we had planned already for some time to make sure that we communicate about our severe weather alert service as well, which is why tomorrow the advertising program kicks off to remind people, and the incentive program kicks off to encourage more people to sign up. Yes, we have had more people sign up since the 2022 flood, but we want to have even more people on board, and that's what will happen during the month of September. So we are working through recommendation by recommendation. We are working through to make our city more resilient, our community more resilient, and to make sure that everyone is more prepared. And so we will continue to do that because it is important, as I said, that whatever might happen in this coming summer, that we are as ready as we possibly can be as a city. That's what I've asked the CEO and all of the officers. That's what Councillor Wines has asked the CEO and all of the officers. We are on the same page to make sure that we are as ready as we possibly can be. And so while the lessons of 2022 are fresh in our mind, we've been taking the action that needed to be taken. Mr Chair, the lighting up of council assets this week, last night and tonight, the Story Bridge, Victoria Bridge, Redcliffe Place and the Tropical Dome will be lit up blue, white and red to support Legacy Week. Legacy Week runs from the 28th of August to the 3rd of September to raise awareness and funds to support the volunteers as they care for veterans' families. And the Legacy Week appeal has been running since the 1940s. And I would also point out that as part of an arrangement that was put in place with the opening of the Legacy Way Tunnel, every year this council donates $100,000 to Legacy as part of the arrangement from the tolls in that tunnel. And so $100,000 is donated from council to Legacy, and that's part of what I believe is a great honour to be able to name the tunnel, the Legacy Way Tunnel, after that amazing organisation. And so we will continue to support them through that initiative with the $100,000 in funding, which makes a real difference in the lives of veterans' families. Tomorrow night, City Hall will be lit up in purple to support International Overdose Awareness Day. And this Awareness Day is one of the world's largest campaigns to end overdosing on alcohol and drugs. Tomorrow night, the Story Bridge, Victoria Bridge and Redcliffe Place Tropical Dome
has expired.
Move for an extension. Seconded.
We have an extension of time motion moved by the Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Landers. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Tomorrow night, the Story Bridge, Victoria Bridge and Redcliffe Place and Tropical Dome will be lit up in gold and green to support Wattle Day. A lot of people aren't aware that the wattle is our national floral emblem, but that's where the green and gold colours come from. So they know, our Olympic team and athletes, when they're dressed in the green and gold, that originates from the Australian wattle. They may not know that there are also 1,000 different species of wattle or acacia that grow right across. The golden wattle is one of those unique ones, though, that doesn't add to allergies, which is a good thing, obviously. So we're supporting Wattle Day with the lighting up of assets. On Thursday night, we'll be lighting up the Story Bridge, Tropical Dome and Victoria Bridge and Redcliffe Place in red, white and blue to celebrate National Flag Day. And I have talked about my admiration for the flag and my support for the flag before. I've been criticised by certain councillors for my support for the flag, and I think that while everyone's entitled to their view, we will continue to support our chief national symbol, the national flag, as a symbol that brings us together as a nation. And we don't have three national flags. We have one national flag. We have one national flag, Councillor Cassidy.
Councillor.
The flag, as I've mentioned before, was the very first flag in the world to be designed by a national competition where ordinary Australians had the ability to have their say on the design. On Thursday night, City Hall will be lit up in blue to support Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. Prostate Cancer Foundation of Australia is the country's leading community-based organisation for prostate cancer research, awareness and support. Also on Friday night, all of the assets will be lit up in pink for what, Councillor Adams? What's happening on Friday night?
Brisbane Festival?
Brisbane Festival, that's right. And Councillor Howard is also very excited. This time we'll see a slightly different start to Brisbane Festival. River Fire is at the beginning rather than the end of of Brisbane Festival. And so River Fire starts the festival with a bang this Saturday night, and then we'll see many, many days after that of an amazing Brisbane Festival right across different locations in the city and suburbs. And we're proud to continue to support Brisbane Festival. Also on Saturday night, the Story Bridge and Victoria Bridge will be lit up in green and gold to support the Matildas as they take on Canada at Suncorp Stadium. And then on Sunday, assets will revert to pink for the Brisbane Festival again. Item A in front of us is the amendments to the biosecurity plan for Brisbane. And obviously this seeks to change and update our biosecurity plan. Under the Biosecurity Act 2014, the state delegates council as the responsible entity to manage invasive plants and animals in the city. And so council has been doing this under the current plan since February 2018, when it also came through the chamber. And this current plan is about updating our existing arrangements when it comes to managing biosecurity. The new plan continues on the good work of the last one, but there is an amendment which includes the removal of Appendix 4, which is the NAL list, an updated classification of the yellow crazy ant, taking it from low risk to high risk, as well as various administrative changes. The NAL being removed from the document will allow council to add and remove items from this list without having to come back to council each single time. Gives us the ability to adapt as new threats evolve. We know that new species of weeds or other non-natives come in, and they can happen quite quickly, and we need to be able to respond quickly. And so this will give us the ability to do that. As a result of the yellow crazy ant being upgraded to a high risk, it allows council to proceed with an eradication program, and we've received a grant of $100,000 through the Queensland Feral Pest Initiative to get on with that plan. The plan will next be renewed in 2027. Item B is the report of the Audit Committee meeting from the 4th of August, and the Audit Committee continues to review Council's internal audit reports, including operational risks and control measures. Throughout the year, Council works with the Audit Committee and also the Queensland Audit Office, who independently ensure that we meet all of our audit requirements. And this can be seen in the report today before us, with the Audit Committee receiving updates from various areas of Council, as well as representatives from the Queensland Audit Office. Finalisation of Council's annual financial statements for the 2021-22 financial year and the final QA audit was a key matter discussed in the meeting. Also of note was an update from the Chief Information Officer on cybersecurity and the continued progress on risk mitigation in this space. The work of the Audit Committee is incredibly important, and we appreciate the committee and its members for their efforts. Item C is the Cannery Creek Sewer Upgrade Project, involving council consent for this project. Cannery Creek is a relatively narrow tidal creek that experiences strong flows during intense rainfalls. Since 2019, Urban Utilities and Council have been working on a solution to help manage these flooding impacts on the suburbs of Northgate and Banyo. Both Council and Urban Utilities have been working with the local community to design a nature-based solution that helps ease the flooding issues. So maybe Hanlon Park miniature version. We are taking some of the learnings from Hanlon Park here, and QUU has been doing a fantastic job in making sure this project is a good one for the local community. The project involves building a screening chamber, wet weather pump station, a 2-kilometre pipeline, sedimentation basins, and also wetland and bioretention basins. The item today grants Urban Utilities a number of easements and also a licence to enter and construct and a separate agreement involving the Commonwealth land as well. Once this has been executed, construction of the program will begin. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Further debate. Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks, Chair. I'll speak on all these items and just ask that item B be taken seriatim for voting.
B seriatim for voting. Noted.
Thanks. So on item A, the amendments to the biosecurity plan for Brisbane, what we see here before us today is this LNP administration designing our city's biosecurity plan around the minimum requirements to receive state government funding for the Wipe Out Weeds program, basically, and also some external funding, as the Mayor has said, to do a yellow crazy ant eradication program. Don't see any council money going into those programs, but what we are seeing is council's policies and council's plans are now being massaged around these external funding sources, because clearly this LNP administration is dumping all of our ratepayer monies into these inner city projects that are sucking the budget dry. So all those suburban communities, particularly those community groups that are working really hard about out in our bushland areas, and natural environment in trying to work together as a community, are no longer really supported by this LNP administration. They just seek to get some external grant funding to roll out programs and are redesigning whole plans around that. Appendix 4, as the Lord Mayor has said, has been removed entirely, so we don't have any council-based fine-grained planning around locally invasive pest species anymore. And the Lord Mayor's used the excuse of saying that that's to ensure that this biosecurity plan can be more up-to-date than the local law, but then went on to say that the biosecurity plan won't be updated again until 2027, which is another 5 years away. So if in fact those changes needed to be made, that natural assets local law could be changed in a much more timely fashion, and there are mechanisms for that to occur in this council chamber. So this is really just the next step in a long line of this LNP administration whittling away the great work of previous administrations, and include previous Liberal and LNP administrations in picking up that great work that started in the late 80s and early 1990s. But what we see before us today is the sort of the lazy approach of this LNP Mayor and this LNP administration. And we wouldn't have these sort of plans that we need to have and the community engagement and the funding for these programs if it wasn't for the Labor administration of the 1990s, of course, Chair, which secured thousands of hectares of bushland and really got that program off and running in a really big way. Now, the LNP will, I'm sure someone will get up and say, oh no, it was Sally Ann that did all that. When you look at those bushland preservation reports, one's come through committee today, you see that one property that the Atkinson Liberal administration bought, and then you see the thousands, out of shame, and then the thousands, because they were worried about the Greens back then, weren't they? Everything old is new again, isn't it, in this place when it comes to the Liberals? But the thousands and thousands of hectares that were purchased under the Sawley administration, which really got that program off and running, we now see these lazy plans that this LNP administration brings to this place that just whittle away that good work. Is really quite disappointing. The document mentions a few things that are of critical importance to our biodiversity and the future of our environment across the city. And one of those is feral cats, and we know that is a really big issue. But Council washes its hands all too often under this administration around the responsibility of managing both feral cats and domestic cats that are not contained within a property. And while any cat, whether it's a feral cat or a domestic cat, is roaming our suburbs right across Brisbane and through our bushland areas, we know that thousands and thousands of native wildlife will be destroyed in that cat's lifetime. And to sort of see the table of responsibility, I suppose they would call it in this document here, about whether those things need to be reported to state government or council and who takes responsibility for managing that. It's all sort of, it's like a spreadsheet. It's all very bureaucratic. There's no real care or concern about actually getting out and doing this work on the ground. It's sort of a tick and flick exercise for this LNP administration. We accept we need to have one of these plans. We'll be supporting this plan today because we can't be without a biosecurity plan, because this LNP administration wouldn't be able to go begging to other levels of government to get funding without it, and we realise that money will support the great work of the community out there, but we can do so much better. We can do so much better. Labor administrations in the past have done so much better. They've cared about the suburbs that make up this city and the people that do that great work, and we will again in the future as well, Mr Chair. On the Audit Committee report, there's a few interesting items in the Audit Committee report this month, particularly about the Council's CEO has a conflict of interest and is now acting as the chair of the CBIC. And we of course know that this officer in Council is the one that can take direction from the Lord Mayor and carry out the Lord Mayor's missives, I suppose. He really should be at arm's length from those decisions that are being made, should be completely independent. That's supposed to be the idea of CBIC, but we see in this report today, we haven't been made aware of that other than what's in the Audit Committee report today. You know, the decisions that this CBIC, the City of Brisbane Investment Corporation, are making are clearly now able to be directed by the Lord Mayor. I mean, technically that is correct, because the chair of the board is an officer, a senior executive in council that can be directed by the Lord Mayor. Now, let's not forget some of the decisions that CBIC have made in recent times. The Lord Mayor talks a lot about council's roles and responsibilities when it comes to addressing the housing affordability crisis in Brisbane, and says that council is just a body that approves development, and that's about it. Offers 18 homes, I think it is, to the community housing program in council. But it was just a few years ago that CBIC, using ratepayers' money, engaged in private property development. We'll remember those units they built, those luxury, high-end, very expensive units over Augusta Street, Toowong. And you know, I'm sure they made a mozza speculating on the property market and driving up property prices. Well, this is this Lord Mayor's property development company, the CBIC, making those decisions, and that was sort of at arm's length, I guess. But now we find out that council's CEO is the chair of the CBIC, and that's a council officer that this Lord Mayor can direct to do certain things. So that's a bit of a concern to us to find out that. The Lord Mayor talked about the financial statements that the Audit Committee has looked at. We all, of course, know that we will never see them again when it comes to budget reviews, particularly the final set of financial statements that we had last week in the council chamber here, because of those decisions that this LNP administration made to make sure that the budget remains secret, or variances, I suppose, in the budget. Yeah, so they just sort of slosh it around. What's $100 million here or $100 million over there? Now, I'm not sure.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Point of order to you,
I do believe
Deputy
this speech is tending towards defamation, or at least imputing motive, and I ask him to get back to the audit. Oh, sue me, he says.
Yeah, go on. If you think it's defamation, come on, this is ridiculous.
Councillor Cassidy, if you can bring you back to the report, please.
These are political decisions this LNP administration made. There's no secret. There's no secret that the way in which they have designed the budget now is that councillors in this chamber, unless there are overall program changes, that funding for individual items that were listed in the appendix will now no longer be brought to this council chamber. Now, maybe they'll be taken to the Audit Committee and discussed, but we're never given any of that information either. That is all kept behind closed doors in an audit committee that has more observers than councillors sit in this room, but none of them are us. None of them are us, and we don't get any of that information before these reports come to council, and we're supposed to be supporting them. I note there's an update about council's EBA in there as well, Chair, but this agreement that they're getting an update on hasn't even been signed off yet. And this has been negotiated, so-called negotiated, for years and years. Council's about to start another EBA negotiation with workers before the previous one was even signed off. And they're fighting workers about issues like pay and conditions, and access to toilets, simple things like that. That speaks volumes about this administration. They like to go around, the Lord Mayor likes to use the word teal these days and wear the green jackets and the green boots, but deep down we know he is an LNP politician through and through. He is giving the marching orders, I'm sure, in these EBA negotiations to drive a hard bargain. And what that is impacting on is the take-home pay and the conditions of our council workers. Now, we know how those EBAs have worked, or rather not worked, for Brisbane bus drivers, as Councillor Griffiths was alluding to before, in terms of their access to basic human rights, like access to a toilet, or their take-home pay. Now, what we know is, because we go out and talk to bus drivers, of course, I'm not sure whether any member of the administration...
Cassidy, your time has expired.
Point of order. Move for an extension.
Extension of time for the Leader of the Opposition has been moved by Councillor Griffiths, seconded by Councillor Strunk. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Councillor Cassidy.
Thank you. I thank the chamber for that ringing endorsement for a few more minutes. We go and talk to bus drivers, and I'm not sure if members of the administration do, I'm not sure if Councillor Murphy does or the Lord Mayor does, and talk to them about their take-home pay. Now, I was talking to some permanent full-time bus drivers just a couple of weeks ago at the Virginia bus depot. And over the last 10 years, some of those drivers have not seen an increase in their pay.
Point of order, Mr Chair.
Point of order to you, Deputy Mayor.
If it was an EBA report, absolutely fine, but relevance to the very specific, just one line in the Audit Committee, not about the detail. Yep. Which is his argument every week to the report.
I'm giving the detail. Yeah. I'm giving the update that this council should be getting.
Councillor Cassidy, yeah, where in the audit report is there consideration
Talk about the EBA, okay. You just have to bear with me. I'm going to find it for you now. Point 4, the CEO's update. Mr Jensen provided an update on council businesses, including the progress update on the enterprise bargaining agreement, progress on the office relocation accommodation requirements. So clearly council is talking in the audit committee about the matters pertaining to the EBA, and what is the main reason for having an enterprise bargaining agreement is to set the pay and conditions of council's workers. Now, they don't like hearing this, but it is the truth. Bus drivers for the last 10 years, permanent full-time bus drivers, have not seen an increase in their take-home pay. I'm not saying it was eaten up by inflation. I'm saying the dollar figure 10 years ago on their payslip is the same as the dollar figure on their payslip today, because every time those hard-fought wins are made, whether it's a 2 or a 2.5% or a 2.75% increase each year in those EBAs, their rosters are fiddled with and they're played around with, and those broken shifts are longer, which are only on half pay, and their take-home pay is eroded. These are the decisions that are being made by this LNP administration that have been in power for far, far too long. They are being more political, they're being more true to their LNP masters than they are to the workers in Brisbane City Council. This report also mentions a significant cyber risk. We'll remember, we don't know exactly know what the cyber risk is. Doesn't really talk about that, but we do know some of the cyber risks that this administration has faced over the last couple of years. It could be talking about that. Who knows? But council, remember, was ripped off for $500,000. I think it was a Nigerian prince, I think, got him that time. So this high-profile organisation was done by scammers. We certainly hope that those practices have been tightened up over the last couple of years, and ratepayers aren't footing the bill for fraud being perpetrated against this council. And the Audit Committee also noted lessons learnt from the Metro project. Will be very interesting to see if the Queensland Audit Office were very interested in this one when they were observing, according to the minutes before us today. We wonder whether they think that was a well-budgeted and well-run project, considering it went from, was it $944 million to $1.7 billion currently today, and is currently at the moment. Let's see where that lands. It's collapsing Adelaide Street, left, right, and centre. Causing mass carnage to public transport users on the network, and it'll deliver, 60 Swiss-made buses? That's right, yeah, which will increase, I think, the peak hour capacity by about 1,500 seats or something like that for $1.7 billion. I'm sure they didn't form a very positive view of that project. And finally, on the Cannery Creek project, I'd just like to put on record my thanks and congratulations to Leanne Linnard, the state member for Nudgee, for getting this project off the ground with urban utilities. What this report shows is that this LNP administration's happy to let this project happen, but we know out in the north side that community wasn't very well represented by their local LNP councillor, Councillor Adam Allen, who has absolutely been dragging his feet on this project. And I've seen the chatter, don't worry, Councillor Allen, and I know that Leanne Linnard, the state member, was out on the front foot working with the community while the local LNP council was running and hiding on this. And we know why, because this LNP administration is so reliant on every bit of external funding they can get other than ratepayers, because we know they're jacking up rates almost 7% in some suburbs of an average of 5%. People aren't getting good value for money out of those rates. But what we also know is that this budget has got so big because of projects like the Metro that this LNP administration needs to get external sources of revenue as well. And we know what one of those is. We know what the big cash cow for this LNP administration is. It's our 85% stakeholder, 85% share as a stakeholder in urban utilities. And we know that $200 million comes in each and every year. And we know, some of us who have conversations around the place, know that urban utilities were a bit worried about that level of profit being taken out of the business because it was impacting on their ability to deliver the infrastructure upgrades that needs to happen around our city and neighbouring councils as well that are shareholders in urban utilities. But we know this LNP administration is desperate for every cent they can get from every source because they're wasting ratepayers' money on these inner city white elephants like the Metro. So without the advocacy of people like the state member for Nudgee in getting this project off the ground, we know these things just simply wouldn't happen if it was left to LNP councillors who are seeking to take as much profit as they can in driving up the cost of water bills for residents out in the community. So we certainly support this and congratulate Leanne Linnard once again on making sure that this project has got off the ground, and there was genuine community consultation around what the community wanted and making sure that there was genuine suburban benefits when it comes to addressing flooding.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Davis.
Well, thank you, Mr Chair, and I rise to speak on item A, the biosecurity plan for Brisbane. Mr Chair, under the Queensland Biosecurity Act, Council must update its biosecurity plan every 5 years, and this update is very necessary to ensure that Council can continue to deliver in relation to invasive species management responsibilities under the Act, as well as the programs that we undertake, which are unique in Brisbane. And it's been very disappointing to have to sit here and listen to the waffle from the opposition leader. The work that PPI do in terms of our White Out Weeds program, which is fully funded under the Bushland Preservation Levy, was really disappointing, because it also reflects on the really hard work of our habitat groups that work in concert with council officers to deliver on that program. Mr Chair, the updated plan is substantially the same as the existing plan, with only small changes of an administrative nature, including the title and the inclusion of the yellow crazy ants and the removal of Appendix 4. There aren't any other obligations for members of the public under the plan. So the work currently being undertaken by Council to protect Brisbane's biodiversity to continue will include, as I said, the Wipe Out Weeds program in our parks and natural assets, ensuring that Moreton Island remains toad-free, and managing aquatic weeds through weevils grown at Council's innovative biocontrol facility. With regards to yellow crazy ants, we're taking further steps to respond to threats in the updated plan. The yellow crazy ant will be reclassified as high risk to reflect the species management as a top priority for Council. The yellow crazy ant has significant biodiversity impacts and is listed as one of the world's first 100 worst invasive species by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Yellow crazy ants are known to swarm in super colonies. Instead of biting or stinging, they spray formic acid as a defence and to subdue prey. This acid can be lethal to wildlife, including birds and marsupials, and can require medical attention in humans. Yellow crazy ants are also known to farm sugar-secreting scale insects and encourage the growth of sooty moulds, which can cause dramatic impacts on our vegetation. This in turn leads to habitat destruction and food scarcity for other native animals such as koalas, possums and flying foxes. Following a successful Queensland Feral Pest Initiative grant, Council will begin a trial eradication program of the yellow crazy ant under the updated biosecurity plan before us. The program will commence in September 22 until December 2027 across 3 significant infestations at the Gap, in Acacia Ridge and in Stafford. Mr Chair, with regards to the removal of Appendix 4, this came following consultation with CARS to remove the list from the new plan, but it will be made publicly available on the corporate website alongside the biosecurity plan. And while it was originally thought that the inclusion of the list would provide CARS officers with greater weight managing these species, the inclusion of the list within the plan itself has in fact made it more challenging to respond to biosecurity developments, as it can't be modified without coming through Council. So these species will continue to be managed by Council under the NAL with greater flexibility to efficiently respond to emerging biosecurity threats. But I think it's really important, Mr Chair, to share with the Council that the biosecurity plan in front of us allows us to go beyond what the state law requires of us. So the laws are prescriptive in nature and we are required to adhere to them. Thank you, Mr Chair.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Johnston.
Yes, thank you. I rise to speak on item A. Firstly, can I just say regarding the biosecurity plan and Council's on-the-ground practical land management for weeds, that it is grossly inadequate and has been for many years. Every year in the information request sessions, I ask for a list of the wipeout weed projects. There's usually somewhere between $2 and $3 million in funding annually provided for weed removal, which is grossly inadequate. The people who do the hard work in our community are actually bush care groups, and I have a number of active bush care groups in my area, and they are out there every weekend, every month. The creek carers in my area are out every week, pulling weeds out. They are doing Council's job for them, and they are doing it as unpaid labour. It is just not acceptable that it is down to the same volunteers to do this work. It is incredibly difficult to get Council to manage weed infestations on public parkland. And again, I had officers out. It's about the 3rd time since I inherited the Colwell Street Park in Oxley. It was in a horrific state when I first saw it. It's right on the banks of Oxley Creek, and Council did some clean-up, but they still haven't got rid of all the invasive weeds that are out there, and they started encroaching well into the park yet again. But the bigger problem here is what Council says in this actual plan itself. And I'm just on page 30, which is the Biosecurity Surveillance Program objectives for high-risk species in Brisbane. And the high-risk species are a lot of the most common and invasive weeds, as you might expect, including things like cat's claw, which are really nasty out my way. But the operational objective of Council's weed management strategy is, and I quote, to manage, eradicate and respond to high-risk species. So that's great. The word eradicate appears in Council's process. Now, managing weeds is often very difficult. I appreciate that that implies it's ongoing. Eradicating weeds, though, is pretty clear. It wants to get rid of these weeds in certain areas. Now, I then go to page 34, which is the management strategy for the surveillance and treatment of weeds on council land. So this is finer grained detail about what council's going to do, and this is where the problem arises. It states that collectively this information is used to identify, and I quote here, the highest value sites that warrant the greatest protection and investment, with a focus also given to the management of the source of the infestation. Now, very clearly, council is saying that it is only some, and I quote, high value sites that this council is going to use its weed strategy effectively, well, I don't even think it's effectively, to manage. So what is a high value site? That's not public information, that's not in this report. I think all the public spaces in my ward are high value sites, including Oxley Creek, which when it is overgrown, it causes enormous problems for local residents. It blocks open drains, it impacts on wildlife, it blocks the creek itself, it blocks easements, it causes problem for wildlife, you name it. We've got areas along the Brisbane River corridor, which again I think would be a high value site, where council I don't think's ever done any weeding whatsoever. And now we've just had a major landslip in one of these areas, and I've been able to see, again, a site I inherited from another ward, I've been able to see the extent of the weeds in this area in the Brisbane River corridor. I do not think what council says it's going to do and what it actually is doing marries up. And the proof is here on page 34. So I say to Councillor Davis that my next question out of all of this is going to be, what are the highest value sites? Who are the winners that you are going to pick to have weed management undertaken? What about all those areas out there that aren't really fancy but are absolutely overgrown by weeds? Drains in Yeronga, drains in Oxley, river corridor areas all the way through Corinda and Oxley, and you name it. I've got so many of these areas where weeds are a massive, massive problem, and invasive weeds. So what are the highest value sites? Why is it that our stated objective is to manage and eradicate invasive weeds, but then in the fine print you say you're only going to do it on high value sites? That is not acceptable. If we're accepting a biodiversity plan that says we are going to eradicate these species, and they're listed in here in terms of their significance from high significance through to low significance, the objective should be to deal with those of the most severity that are having the most impact on our local community. Instead, I presume that high value sites means marginal LNP wards, because that's the way this LNP administration runs this council budget.
Point of order, Mr Chair.
Point of order to you, Councillor Toomey.
Mr Chair, I've struggled to see why that side of the chamber seem to continually try and change definitions. High value site has a definition, it's a high valued site, it doesn't mean LNP wards. Can we bring it back to a proper debate, please?
Yeah. Councillor Johnson, to the content of this report, please.
I think anybody reading this report will know I'm speaking directly to it. And again, I point you to page 34, where the fine print is. What are the highest value sites? What are they, Councillor Toomey? You're the Deputy Chair of City Standards. I would like to know what these sites are, because I know where I ask for weed management and I know what happens, which is pretty much nothing, or I'm told, oh, your bush care group's doing that. I know how hard they work because I'm out there supporting them, but what I don't know is what the highest value sites that warrant the greatest protection. Where are they? Where is the list? Where is the list? If it's not marginal LNP wards, what is it? Provide the list to us. Be transparent. Publish it on the website. publish it as another appendix to this plan. But what I want to know is that when we log jobs for weed eradication, and we've had a fight at the end of Logan Avenue in Oxley just to get council to acknowledge that it's a council drain that needs to be cleared out, and it is chock-a-block full of invasive species. Chock-a-block. And I don't even know that this is going to get fixed within the next year, let alone any time before the storm season. So the devil is in the detail here. If you have these highest value sites that warrant the greatest protection, what are they? What are the criteria? Are they the areas of highest, significant ecological significance? The high categories of ecological significance in city plan, is it those? Is it some sort of independent measure that we can point to say, yes, it's these areas, it's the Brisbane River Corridor, because they are the places where I want to see this money being spent. And I'll finish where I started, which is the $2 to $3 million a year that council spends on wipeout weeds is grossly inadequate. Grossly inadequate. You know, the fight that we had for about 3 years to try and get the riverbank at Yeronga cleaned up was just extraordinary. And I mean, residents went to the Ombudsman. It is a battle on every occasion with this council to try and get action. What we need is clarity, we need KPIs, and we need accountability in how these programs are delivered. So, Councillor Davis, if you think that trying to get some duck crossing signs is going to be a complicated issue, you'll be getting this as the next question.
Councillor Huang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise to speak on item B of the E&C report of the Audit Committee from 4th August 2022. This is the report of Council's Independent Audit Committee meeting held on 4th of August this year, and which is presented to Council in accordance with our City of Brisbane regulation obligations. Our Audit Committee has oversight of Council's internal audit reports on operational risks and control measures. There is a significant amount of work done by the Independent Audit Committee to ensure Council is effectively managed on behalf of the ratepayers of Brisbane. The Audit Committee is independent of the business of Council, with its responsibilities and scope outlined in the Brisbane City Council Audit Committee Charter. The Audit Committee has oversight and advisory responsibilities under this charter and pursuant to Section 201 of the regulation. This includes reviewing and providing recommendations on internal audits and progress on previous reports, the annual financial statements, and the QAO audit report. In the report before us today, we can see the Audit Committee received updates from the various areas within Council, as well as representatives from the Queensland Audit Office. The finalisation of Council's annual financial statement for the 2021-22 year and the final QAO audit were the key focus areas. I thank the members of the Audit Committee and our internal auditors for their important work, and I commend the report to the Chamber.
Thank you. Further debate? Councillor Sri Ranganathan.
Thanks, Chair. Just rise to speak on the biosecurity policy amendment. And I just wanted to highlight two fairly minor issues, maybe in the context of things. The first is that it's not really mentioned in this document because it's the document's a bit high level, but I'm seeing a significant problem, and bushcare groups are raising it with me and a whole bunch of environmentalists are raising it with me, that council contractors are often inadvertently spreading invasive weed species when they mow one park or they whippersnipper one park and then carry seeds to another area. So I just wanted to make sure that that was on the Chair's radar. It's, I think, something that could be looked at more closely in terms of the standards we set for council contractors and maybe just a little bit of education. Often it's the crews on the ground who maybe don't realise what they're doing, but yeah, if the bushcare groups in my area can point to a few examples where weed species have been introduced to a park or a bushland area by council maintenance crews or subcontractors of council. I think the council officers themselves are probably more alert to this risk, and it's probably some of the private contractors who are more likely to be guilty of this. But it's not something that's directly mentioned in the report, so I just wanted to make sure that the council is aware of this concern from community groups, and maybe the chair could just reassure me in their closing remarks that this is something that is being considered and looked into where possible. I also just wanted to point out that the document, in terms of identifying invasive species, appears to conflate the dingo with wild dogs. This has been the subject of a lot of commentary and debate in environmental conservation circles. And the general consensus is that the dingo is a native species, and the wild dogs that are sort of descended from domestic dogs are not. But this document appears to sort of conflate the two and says, look, it basically applies the same goals and objectives to both dingoes and dogs that aren't dingoes. And maybe that's an area for further reform and for the council to investigate in greater detail. I presume there aren't many dingoes around the Brisbane local government area, but the fact that we don't distinguish in our own strategies and documents is perhaps something that needs to be looked at, because I for one would be quite concerned if the council was trying to exterminate or relocate or whatever native dingoes, because native dingoes are just treated as wild dogs. They are different species. They play different roles in our ecosystems, and I don't, in this document at least, I don't see that distinction being drawn. It's pretty clear there that from the, I don't have the page number now in front of me, I was reading it before. It's pretty clear from the way this document is written that there isn't that clear distinction between dingoes and wild dogs, and that's something that I'd hope council officers would look at in future, particularly in terms of how we manage those known species. Ideally, we should be undertaking some genetic testing of wild dog populations and identifying to what extent they could reasonably be described as dingoes versus, I think it's Canis familiaris is the scientific name for the domestic dog. Ideally, that's what we'd be doing. I accept that we might not have the resources to do that alone, but there are state government projects and partnerships that could be explored here. So that if there are dingoes in any of council-controlled parks or recreation reserves, we can identify them as such and not find ourselves poisoning native animals because we think they're feral dogs when actually they're native species. Thanks.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Wines.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I just rise to provide further information and clarity around item C, the Cannery Creek Sewer Upgrade Project Council consent. So this is a major sewage upgrade being facilitated by Urban Utilities, or Queensland Urban Utilities for the true believers. The corridor requires council's consent, so this group has to approve the use of this space for this sewerage easement upgrade. So to provide further context to the council, this is a council-owned land, and the council also holds parts of it in trust on behalf of the federal government. We need to provide this consent to allow this important tripartite agreement to occur. The project will take 2.5 years to complete. What is it that we're trying to address, or what is it that Queensland Urban Utilities is trying to address? So during a deluge or a heavy rainfall, the sewerage infrastructure is at capacity, or can be at capacity, which means there is a risk that waste may overflow from this site into either council land or potentially onto private property, something which is not acceptable to me, and I hope not acceptable to other members of the council. It's been a long-standing issue at this particular location, and there has been consensus now between Urban Utilities, the federal government and the council that this work is both necessary and beneficial for both local residents and the public space around them. This is the kind of work that we do continually. However, as I say, a 2.5-year project that requires council's consent to use the land is on the larger end. However, it's important to take a moment to reflect that ongoing upgrades of sewerage is a fundamental part of what council is able to provide through one of our subsidiaries. The creek banks will be rehabilitated and beautified, including the construction of a new shared path. QUU has also worked with council and the community to design a number of nature-based solutions involving the construction of a screening chamber, wet weather pump stations through that 2-kilometre pipeline, sedimentation basins, and there's also a final wetland and bioretention basin. So this is a way of preserving and protecting both the natural environment, the public amenity, but also the actual physical asset itself. A number of those items were there to make sure that the issue of potential damage to the sewer line is reduced through major events. There was local consultation occurred in 2019 with about 4,500 notices sent out to locals to participate in an ongoing information process, and there has been an ongoing consultation since that time. The feedback has been largely positive and people are looking forward to the work, and we can also credit local residents as being those who came up and they can be credited with the proposal for the nature-based solution and along with another group of initiatives in that area to make it even more attractive and pleasant. Considering what could happen, it would be far more attractive and available to the public for their enjoyment. So can I encourage all councillors to support item C when it's proposed later on?
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I rise to add a local context to item C, the Cannery Creek Sewer Upgrade Project. The project, as Councillor Wines indicated, was initially initiated in early 2019. I've been quite close to this project since that time. Cannery Creek is a challenging environment in the Northgate ward. It's worth bearing in mind for the benefit of the chamber that Cannery Creek was previously known as Cannery Drain, and the naming was changed to Cannery Creek by my predecessor. Cannery Creek, as it's now known, is in fact a tidal stormwater drain that is bordered on one side by industrial businesses and on the other by residential homes. Over the years, there have been a number of challenges that have emerged in this location. Firstly, in heavy rain events, stormwater can infiltrate the sewer system, which results in sewerage entering people's properties, yards and the creek itself, and can contribute to strong odours in the area. Secondly, the creek adjoins an industrial area and there is risk of contaminants entering the creek from these adjoining industrial businesses. In recent times, we've identified instances where contaminants have escaped from those businesses, and we have an ongoing process to monitor contaminants from those businesses, and we work in conjunction with the Department of Environment and Science. Thirdly, as it's a tidal drain, which is tidal to Schulz Canal, the drain has become inundated with mangroves, which create odour problems when the pods drop in warmer months. As the drain is tidal in nature, the water velocity is very low, so the ability of the tide to clear these pods out is minimal, and that can create quite significant odour problems. And the only time these pods can effectively be cleared from the drain is during heavy rainfall. Now, the project that is being progressed by Urban Utilities will alleviate these problems and will use both green and traditional infrastructure. It will deliver a much better environmental outcome for the community. It will also deliver some great public realm outcomes, including dual shared pathways on either side of the creek and a new footbridge to improve public accessibility to what will be a much improved public asset. It will provide improved connectivity to Progress Park and between Earnshaw Road and Nudgee Road. The project has been actively supported by a number of stakeholders, including the community via the Community Planning Team, Council, state and federal agencies and Urban Utilities contractors and consultants. Now, Councillor Cassidy indicated that the local state member had been a key catalyst in this project, and I suspect he's living in some sort of a parallel universe. I've been involved in this project since the very beginning in 2019. And other than Urban Utilities having the grace to provide the local state member with updates on this project, I'm not aware of her having had any contribution at all. And importantly, in today's submission, the state government isn't even mentioned. So, honestly, this notion that the state member was instrumental in this, as I said, is absolute nonsense. Now, moving on, the Urban Utilities Delivery Partner, which is Fulton Hogan, have commenced initial works on the site. They are there now. You know, as the local councillor, I've seen the challenges in this location. I'm delighted to see that work has now commenced. It is a long project. It will take a little while to land, but what I am confident of is that we are going to have a terrific community outcome in this location, and I commend the resolution to the chamber.
Thank you. Any further debate? Lord Mayor, summing up? Okay. Thank you. We now move to the vote on these items in the E&C report. Item B is seriatim for voting, so move for a vote on items A and C. Items A and C. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Item B. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. No. The ayes have it.
Division. Seconded.
Division has been called by Councillor Griffiths, seconded by Councillor Strunk. Ayes to my right, noes to the left. Please ring the bells. Ring bells. And we ring, there's a Yeah. We have our backup bells. There's always a backup. Did you hear it out there, Councillor? How's that risk going? Sorry? Okay. Okay, all right. I think everyone who's here is here. Thank you. Class, please read the result.
Mr Chair, the ayes have it, the voting being 16 in favour and 6 against.
Okay. I declare that motion for item B carried. Councillor Landers.
Mr Chair, I move that Council now adjourn for afternoon tea for 15 minutes, which commences only when all councillors have vacated the chamber and the doors have been locked.
Seconded.
Thank you. It has been moved by Councillor Landers and seconded by Councillor Hutton that the council now adjourn for an afternoon tea break that commences when everybody's left the chamber. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Thank you, councillors. Deputy Mayor, the report of the Economic Development and Brisbane 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games Committee meeting, please.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I move that the report of the Economic Development and Brisbane 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games Committee held on Tuesday the 23rd of August 2022 be adopted.
Seconded.
Yes, thank you. It's been moved by the Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Hutton that the report of the Economic Development and the Brisbane 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games Committee meeting dated Tuesday 23 August 2022 be adopted. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Chair. First of all, my update on the mentoring programs and workshops coming up in the next week at the Hub on the 31st, which is tomorrow at 9 o'clock, how to motivate and manage high-performing teams in 2022. It's an interactive workshop about the power of the Spark-type framework, being presented by Anna Hebron, Certified Spark-type Advisor. On the 6th of September at 9 o'clock, how to overcome cognitive overload to refocus your business. An informative session to teach participants a clear set of tools to help improve productivity and refocus your business. That's being presented by CoLab People and Culture. And also on the 6th at 12:30 to 2, Pitch Like a Pro, an interactive workshop sharing some of the tools and tactics the advertising world applies to get buy-in from people that matter most. And that is being delivered by Pitch Camp. So again, we thank our business experts and partners on their delivery of these free programs for all businesses across Brisbane. We hope they can get onto businessinbrisbane.com.au and go to workshops and events to figure out what is on in our fantastic business hub.
I also wanted to mention, just as we're heading into the last day of our Rediscover Brisbane campaign that has been held on the Brisbane app over the last month, where we have had an opportunity to enjoy a tourism experience right across Brisbane for just $20. So every morning at 10 o'clock, a visitor experience came online, and if you were the first ones in for however many were on offer that day, you would get that experience for $20. There have been some fantastic experiences. Trips to Tangalooma, beer tours through Fellons, winery tastings through City Winery, hot air balloons, climbing the Story Bridge, just to name a few. But it is about the support that our local businesses will get. These are all local tourism experiences, but from the business app and those that are on the business app, we have had an increase of 94,500 from December 2021, but 140% increase since the Rediscover Brisbane from the same 3-week period in the previous month. So at the moment, at 10 o'clock in the morning, 600 people per minute are opening the Brisbane app at 10 a.m. to find out what deals are on offer. And I can assure you on day 30 that every deal has sold out to date. So those who were lucky enough to get a $20 deal have until the 31st of December to actually use those deals, and I'm hoping that means people will go out, have an experience and spend a bit of extra money in our beautiful city as well. So there was actually also growth with our guide views off the back of Rediscover Brisbane as well. So we had 29,500 guide views were tracked to weekend on the 26th of August. That was a 63% increase compared to the same week last month as well, and a total of nearly 75,000 guide views, which is an increase of 515% from the same 3-week period the month before that. So it is campaigns like this that not only promote Brisbane and what there is to see and do, that get people onto the app, and then also get supporting all of those businesses that have registered themselves on the app. And again, I ask councillors, as I know those opposite, particularly the only one that is here opposite, Councillor Strunk, has done a great job at promoting the app and letting their businesses know that it is there for them to use for free advertising to promote what they do in the What's On to See in Brisbane. Last week's committee presentation was about the Breakfast Creek Sports Precinct, which is a 29-hectare, once-in-a-generation opportunity to utilise an entirely government-controlled land to create one of the most accessible sporting facilities in the world. We have worked very hard with Brothers Rugby Club and Queensland Cricket to create the Breakfast Creek Sports Precinct, and look forward to continuing our discussions that we've been having with the state government, other key stakeholders and games partners to progress this concept. We know through the Future Host Agreement that this is the new proposed Brisbane Indoor Sports and Para Centre, but it could be an absolute landmark all-abilities venue that will accommodate basketball, wheelchair basketball, goalball, netball, volleyball, badminton facilities and a para-athletic training gym. The Sports Centre would be one of the most accessible all-ability sporting facilities in Australia, and it would be built to globally recognised accessibility standards. So the proposed centre at the moment, we are proposing to build it on the Brothers Club site at Crosby Park. Brothers Club relocated to Breakfast Creek on the other side of the precinct, which, through you, Mr Chair, an avid supporter of Brothers Rugby Club, makes you that little bit closer to the Breakfast Creek Hotel, which I don't think anybody's complaining about, as well as new facilities and additional sporting fields as well. So as the centre of Olympic basketball and Paralympic wheelchair basketball events, the centre will need a 12,000 person seating capacity. And let's be totally honest here, this green space is extremely vital with the development and the growth we've seen in that inner north precinct over the last few years. Bowen Hills around the RNA and the North Shore Hamilton PDAs have resulted in a massive undersupply of additional green space, sporting facilities and parkland in these areas. And if we were to adhere to Council's desired standard of service, as we do in all of our neighbourhood plans, Bowen Hills should have contributed 111 hectares of new sport, local and district parkland, but they only delivered 6. That is right, 6 hectares instead of 111. Hamilton North Shore should have contributed 68 hectares but delivered 5. with another 3.9 in the plans. So Breakfast Creek Sports Precinct, as we are proposing, would result in a 185% increase in public green space. Crosby Park parkland, dog off-leash areas to be retained, additional green space added, a generous green corridor connecting Crosby Road right through to Breakfast Creek, and a 130% increase in community sporting facilities in fields in an area that addresses not only their community need for indoor sports and sporting fields in the inner north, but gives us a fantastic legacy from the 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games. I leave the report to the chamber. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there any debate? No debate. We now move to the vote on the report. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Councillor Murphy, Transport Committee report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the report of the Transport Committee meeting held on Tuesday, the 23rd of August 2022 be adopted.
Seconded.
Thank you. It has been moved by Councillor Murphy and seconded by Councillor Huang that the report of the Transport Committee meeting dated Tuesday, 23 August 2022 be adopted. Councillor Murphy.
Thanks, Chair. Look, the Shrinner Council is all about delivering safe and efficient transport networks so people can get home quicker and safer. And right across the city, we are working on projects to ensure our transport network is modern, that's fit for purpose, that it's accessible for all, and that it's ready to support this city's capacity to grow into the future. And with so much happening across Brisbane, Mr. Chair, I wanted to just provide the chamber with a quick update on some of the projects within the transport portfolio and their progress in recent weeks. At the centre of our vision for Brisbane's future is, of course, the Brisbane Metro project, which will revolutionise our city's public transport network. In Brisbane, we're already lucky to have 27 kilometres of segregated busway, but with Brisbane Metro, we can make better use of this world-class asset. Along the busway, works are taking place at several suburban stations. At UQ Lakes, progress is now well underway on the new Platform 3, which will increase capacity of this station and allow it to cater for Metro vehicles into 2024. The existing Platform 1 will also be extended and upgraded with pantograph charging arms installed for our new battery electric Metro vehicles. On the other side of the Eleanor Chanel Bridge, work has begun on the charging infrastructure, which will support the chargers at the station itself. At the Cultural Centre, major works have now commenced to transform the station into a new open green plaza, and many councillors that do the morning commute will have noticed the switch over to the temporary platforms has occurred there, and it has occurred, by the way, Chair, I should say, absolutely seamlessly. And I want to thank the tremendous transport planners and engineers, right down to the bus operators within Transport for Brisbane who've been working on making this a seamless transition for our customers here in Brisbane. They've done a fantastic job and it is operating without a hitch. Of course, at that station, new landscaping, wider footpath seating, shade and a new modern platform environment will ensure that we can cater to Metro services from 2024 and beyond. Very soon, major works will commence at Buranda Station to lengthen the platform and improve the surrounding plaza. I know that there already has been some works commencing there. We can tell that these works have commenced because we've started to receive some complaints about night works noise, as you sometimes do, Chair. Work is also well underway at the Brisbane Metro depot at Rochedale, with initial earthworks nearing completion, as well as the tunnel portal on Adelaide Street. Work is continuing to progress well, and very much later in this year, tunnelling works will commence under the surface at this location, which will be a great moment for the city. Of course, Chair, many residents have also seen our Metro vehicles either out and about during testing or at the Ekka earlier this month. Now that we've placed our order for the remainder of the initial fleet, we can expect to see more Metros arriving ahead of 2024 as well. As I flagged a few weeks ago, Mr. Chair, in October, we will launch Brisbane's most extensive bus network review in over a decade to evolve the current bus network to include our new high-frequency Metro service and unlock more connections and key destinations across our city. There is already a survey online for residents to complete about how they use public transport in our city today. But in October, we'll be releasing a draft network to the residents and the community for feedback. This will help shape the final network before it's implemented in 2024. And of course, Mr. Chair, I can't forget about our ferry network. 13 of our terminals are already back online following the floods, and we are continuing to progress repairs on the remaining 8 terminals. These terminals require further repairs before they can return to service. This work is now well underway at 6 of the 8 remaining terminals, and we expect these terminals to return to service late in 2022, subject to weather and site conditions. We're also working hard to provide better active transport connections, Chair, through our Green Bridges program. Our Green Bridges program, along with Brisbane Metro, are now both listed as priority projects by Infrastructure Australia, recognising the importance of these connections and the capacity that they provide. The work is full steam ahead on both the Kangaroo Point and the Breakfast Creek Green Bridges, with barges in place on the river and piling work underway. At Kangaroo Point, marine piling will continue over the coming months to install 7 piers that will support the bridge structure. We're also constructing the pedestrian and cycling connections for Kangaroo Point Landing, which will provide access to pedestrian, cyclist and e-mobility users from the city to Kangaroo Point, Woolloongabba and beyond. The bridge will be an icon on our Brisbane River, a tourist destination in its own right, and it will link our CBD to the new Olympic Stadium at the Gabba. And I recently spoke, Mr Chair, at the start of major works on Breakfast Creek Green Bridge as well, with piling now underway on that. The Shrinner Council is also leading the way in active transport, continuing to expand the use of e-scooters in Brisbane, with trials underway in our Bayside suburbs down at Wynnum Manly and at Shorncliffe. Mr Chair, we are continuing to improve and deliver cycling connections for residents as well, which brings me to our committee meeting last week, where we had a presentation on retrofit separation devices for our roads. Now, Council has been trialling different separation devices, including flexible bollards, rubber curbing and low-profile strips, to investigate options for physically separating bike lanes from general traffic lanes to improve the safety for cyclists using those facilities. As part of the trial, there have been devices installed at 3 locations on Melbourne Street in South Brisbane and 2 locations on Wynnum Road at Morningside. These sites were selected as they are key cycling routes with actually quite high traffic levels for on-road cycling facilities. Procurement for the independent trial evaluation process is currently underway, which will involve assessing video footage that we have been taking for many, many months at those sites, as well as traffic counts as well. We will be looking at key learnings from the trial, including ways in which the device is secured to the road surface and how to manage driveway crossings, as well as very simple things, Chair, like how many times a certain bollard was hit by a car or a truck and taken away. Obviously, these are fairly new devices around the city. It's taken some time for both motorists and cyclists to adapt to them, but the feedback that we do consistently get from cyclists is that they definitely feel better with those bollards in place than without them at all, but that those bollards are no replacement for safe, separated bidirectional cycling facilities. But in acknowledging, of course, that our city is a city that was very much built around the motor vehicle, anything that we can do to improve safety in the short and medium term ahead of major cycling facilities being rolled out all across the city is a good thing and something that we should definitely look forward to. So I look forward to seeing the results of the trial, and I'll leave further debate to the council chamber.
Thank you. Is there any further debate? No? No further debate. We now move the report. All in favour of the Transport Committee report, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Councillor Wines, Infrastructure Committee report, please.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I move that the report of the Infrastructure Committee meeting held on Tuesday the 23rd of August 2022 be adopted.
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved by Councillor Wines and seconded by Councillor Hammond that the report of the Infrastructure Committee meeting dated Tuesday 23 August 2022 be adopted. Councillor Wines.
Thank you, Mr Chair. The presentation last week was around the project's office work to upgrade the intersection of Melton and Howes, which is very near to your ward, but is in fact in Northgate ward. So to orientate the council, this particular intersection upgrade was right proximate to the old Toombul Shopping Centre on the eastern side. The project features were there was a construction of a new roundabout with splitter islands and pedestrian refuges, the installation of a new pedestrian refuge crossing with the median to the south of the intersection on Melton Road, construction of a 2.5 metre wide shared path on Melton Road and a 1.5 metre wide footpath on Howes Road, the installation of bike ramps on Melton, upgrades to the stormwater drainage, street lighting, line marking in the intersection and landscaping around the intersection, including the planting of 8 new trees. The project took 10 months to complete and has achieved practical completion in August, so only weeks ago. The intersection had proven to be so there were some concerns about safety for motorists and pedestrians. Also, there's a special reflection on this project. There was an individual who lived nearby who was of impaired vision, of a low vision. We worked with that particular individual, also the Human Rights Commission and the team to make sure that there was a continued safe crossing for people with low vision in this area. So I just wanted to make special mention of that and the commitment that this council has to addressing concerns for people with sight issues or mobility issues or whichever needs to be addressed at the time. But I just want to reassure the council that, that we did a great deal of work to make sure that this was safe to use for all pedestrians of all abilities. Now, there were 3 petitions considered. The first 2 were supported by the local councillor and the third one was not. The third petition considered today is about speed limits. If councillors will reflect on the council resolution and the council debate of last week, it was determined that this is in line with that discussion that we had last week about speed limits, so the matter was resolved in the negative to that request. That's also the case with this petition.
Thank you. Is there any further debate? No further debate. I move the... Oh, sorry, Councillor Sri Ranganathan.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just wanted to speak on the petition. Apologies, thought someone else might want to speak first. I mean, we've been here before with some of these petitions, so I guess I find myself wondering: is it really worth pushing the LNP on this stuff when I know what they're going to say already? Yeah, with petition D, we had a petition to decrease the speed limits in a few streets around the new high-density precinct of West End, so Kurilpa Street, Roger Street, Ferry Road, I think Duncan Street was another one down there. This is an area where several thousand residents live in a few blocks. It's probably one of the most high-density neighbourhoods in the entire state of Queensland. There's very high volumes of pedestrian traffic, lots of people walking to work or walking for leisure, walking to the shops, bus stops, etc. And compared to the high volumes of pedestrian traffic, the car volumes are not that high. These streets don't lead to anywhere else. They basically just stop at this residential precinct. You can't drive down Kurilpa Street or Ferry Road to get to any other locations. And I think the residents in this area were rightly saying, look, we don't feel safe when cars are roaring down these streets at 50 kilometres an hour. And there's no need for them to be roaring down these streets at 50 kilometres an hour because the streets don't lead anywhere anyway. Can we drop the speed limit to 40 or 30 kilometres an hour? And if necessary, can we introduce some traffic calming to slow things down? But to my great frustration, the response from the council officers was that, no, we don't need traffic calming on these streets because they're not being used to shortcut it anywhere else. And that's not the only reason to put in traffic calming. That's certainly one of the reasons to install traffic calming on residential streets is because a lot of heavy vehicles might be shortcutting through that area to get to another neighbourhood. But another legitimate reason to install traffic calming is simply to slow down the cars on that particular street to make it a safe and comfortable environment for local residents. And through you, Chair, to Councillor Wines, I think there's actually a pretty significant cultural problem among the BCC traffic engineers who are still very car-centric in their thinking and who are very resistant to installation of traffic calming and to lowering speed limits. So with this petition, the response was borderline defensive in my view. The council officers just did not even want to open up conversation about dropping speed limits to 40 kilometres an hour, despite the fact that this is the sort of high-density residential precinct, a high-activity use area that's described in the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices as the sort of place where we would want to have lower speed limits. So Councillor Wines, I know you probably didn't look personally at this one too closely. You've got a lot on your plate, and one lowly petition about speed limits probably didn't rate high on the agenda. You were inclined to just trust the advice of the officers who looked at this. But your officers are wrong. Your officers are prioritising high speed limits and the presumed convenience of motorists ahead of the safety and comfort of pedestrians. And that's the wrong decision to be making in an inner city, high density neighbourhood where we're trying to encourage public and active transport use. And so I don't necessarily think that this outcome is any different to some of the other petitions we've had for traffic calming and lower speed limits in other parts of my ward. But I just found it a bit frustrating that they wouldn't even list it. Excuse me. Normally, if there's a petition for traffic calming, the officers will at least say, oh yeah, we'll list it for traffic calming. They don't actually intend to do it. There's not going to be any money to do it, but they at least acknowledge, yeah, we'll put it on the long list and maybe it'll get delivered at some point. In this case though, they didn't even want to list it. They're like, nah, we don't need traffic calming here because it doesn't meet the criteria. But their interpretation of the criteria was incorrect. The criteria lists a number of reasons for which traffic calming can be introduced, and this area met at least a couple of those criteria. It didn't meet all of the criteria in that it didn't meet the requirement that the streets are being used as a shortcut to get to somewhere else. But those criteria that are listed in council's policy are not. You only need to satisfy one of those criteria to qualify for traffic calming. You don't need to satisfy all of them. So your own officers here misinterpreting and misapplying the council policy, and then being, I think, a little bit defensive when they're questioned on that. So I think this is a really good example of how car-centric thinking is still entrenched within Brisbane City Council, and is perhaps a space where the council's middle management and upper management within these teams needs to look more closely at the decisions that their lower ranking officers are making and inquire as to whether they really are in line with the council's purported strategic directions of encouraging active and public transport. Because if you have a neighbourhood where people are petitioning for lower speed limits and those streets don't lead to anywhere else and no one's really going to be affected by it other than the people who live in these streets, surely there's no great harm in dropping that speed limit to 40 kilometres an hour. Certainly I would have liked to see it go down to 30 kilometres an hour, but at the very least 40 kilometres an hour would seem reasonable. So through you, Chair, I hope Councillor Wines will look into this one a little bit more closely and can maybe at least satisfy himself that the decision has been properly made here, because I don't think the council officers have interpreted their own criteria correctly. I don't think they've properly considered the evidence from residents and the information that I've provided that this does meet the criteria of a high activity area. There's quite a few ground level businesses. There are corner shops and groceries and that sort of thing. There's a giant Woolworths supermarket just around the corner. There's as I said, thousands of residents living in this precinct in a very high density neighbourhood with tall apartment towers and a lot of people moving around on the footpaths and crossing back and forth across the streets and that sort of thing. So this is exactly the sort of precinct where council should be saying, look, this is a walkable neighbourhood. We want to prioritise pedestrians. Walkable neighbourhood equals lower speed limits. That should be the dominant approach in these sorts of areas. But instead, the council officers are saying, nah, 50k is fine. Anyone who goes down and visits Kurilpa Street or Ferry Road or Rogers Street will see that it clearly doesn't make sense to treat these as 50-kilometre-hour roads. And in fact, a lot of people are driving a bit slower at 30 or 40 kilometres an hour. It's just those rare few motorists that roar through at 50 that give everyone a fright and make parents too scared to send their kids to school on foot. And if we want to reduce traffic congestion and make it safe for kids to walk to school and make it safe and comfortable for people to walk to the local bus stop, etc., we need to tolerate and embrace these lower speed limit proposals rather than obstructing them, as the council officers have done in this case. So, very unhappy with this petition response here today, obviously. I won't be supporting it. and I'd ask the Chair if we could take that item separately for debate.
Item D, seriatim.
Yeah, but just as a more general principle, I hope the LNP will consider more deeply what benefit does it serve to be so resistant to 40km/h speed limits in residential neighbourhoods? What purpose does that serve to just disappoint and piss off a whole bunch of local residents who really want this change when there's no one else who's going to be negatively affected by it? Just make the change and we can all move on with our lives. It doesn't even cost that much. It's a little bit of signage to install some 40km/h signage. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Instead, we're all sort of wasting our time dealing with these debates in the council chamber when the council should just be listening to the local community.
Thank you. Any further debate? Summing up, Councillor Wines? Okay, we now move to the vote on items A, B and C in the Infrastructure Committee report. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Vote on item D in the Infrastructure Committee report. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. No. The ayes have it. No division. Thank you. Councillor Allen, City Planning and Suburban Renewal Committee report, please.
Mr Chair, I move that the report of the City Planning and Suburban Renewal Committee meeting held on Tuesday the 23rd of August 2022 be adopted.
Seconded.
Thank you. It has been moved by Councillor Allen and seconded by Councillor Landers that the report of the City Planning and Suburban Renewal Committee meeting dated Tuesday 23 August 2022 be adopted. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr Chair. In last week's committee meeting, we were provided with an update on a recently approved DA for Peppercorn, the good food company at 52 Trade Street, Lytton, and perhaps a warning for those who are non-meat eaters in the chamber, this report may have limited interest. However, Peppercorn was formed in 1997 in New South Wales and remains 100% Australian owned and operated. They offer gourmet, low-fat and low-salt sausages and has expanded to include burgers and meatballs. It's all made from Australian meat and produce. Their product is available across Australia through Woolworths and leading independent supermarkets. The development application included an internal refurbishment and an extension providing an additional 197 square metres of gross floor area. Half of the existing building is allocated to storing and processing raw meat into patties and sausages for distribution across Australia. 25 metric tonnes of raw meat is envisaged to be processed daily. The site includes 38 car park spaces with access to the site remaining from the existing crossover to Trade Street. The development will not generate excessive noise or harmful emissions. The conditions of the approval limit storage of hazardous materials and waste products must be contained indoors for on-site collection of refuse. The selling and cooking of products on-site is not permitted. The community benefits from this development include supporting the local food economy and food supply, enabling and expanding Australian-owned and operated business in Brisbane, supporting current jobs and potential new jobs, supporting local farmers. It also provides for a reduction in distribution time and environmental impacts, and it's a good reuse of an existing building. The development application was approved for the following reasons. It accommodates a regionally significant industry occupying a strategic location in close proximity to transport infrastructure. It protects, facilitates and maintains the long-term viability of industrial uses on the site. It provides an amenity that is appropriate for the use and the locality. And the proposed activities are compliant with relevant health, safety and environmental standards and aligns with the Hemmant-Lytton neighbourhood plan while contributing to Council's vision as a smart, prosperous city. Mr Chair, I'll leave further debate to the chamber.
Is there any further debate? Any opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Councillor Davis, Environment, Parks and Sustainability Committee report, please.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Mr Chair, I move that the report of the Environment, Parks and Sustainability Committee meeting of Tuesday, 23rd August 2022 be adopted.
Seconded.
Thank you. It has been moved by Councillor Davis and seconded by Councillor Mackay that the report of the Environment, Parks and Sustainability Committee meeting dated Tuesday, 23 August 2022 be adopted. Councillor Davis.
Mr Chair, item 8A was last week's committee presentation on the Lord Mayor's Community Sustainability and Environmental Grants Program. The Lord Mayor's Community Sustainability and Environment Grants have been running for more than 15 years and offer funding for environmental and sustainability initiatives for community groups, non-profit organisations, schools and individuals. In 2021-22, grants were awarded across 66 organisations and individuals. There are 4 categories under which groups can apply. The environmental grants provide funding to community-based groups and non-profit organisations to undertake environmental initiatives that address local or citywide community environmental issues on council land. In 2021, under this category, Brisbane's Big Butterfly Count was a funding recipient. This initiative involved over 1,000 participants and 14 agencies undertaking 56 surveys over 24 locations. The participants were able to record 94 different species of butterflies, including the tawny costa, which was not previously recorded in Brisbane. The second category is the sustainability grants that assist organisations to undertake actions, programs and community facility upgrades which support the reduction of energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions. We heard about how the community place in Stafford used their grant to replace old fluorescent lights with new energy efficient LED lights and the old ceiling fans replaced with larger, more energy efficient plans. Council's Cultivating Community Gardens grants is the third category and aims to enhance Brisbane's sustainability and livability by providing funding to local non-profit community groups and organisations to establish, develop and maintain community gardens on council-owned and other land. The Fitzgibbon Community Garden and the Bethania Street Community Garden in Lota are examples, with the grants enabling the groups to purchase equipment and materials to assist volunteers with maintaining the garden and participating in activities while connecting socially and sharing produce from the garden. The fourth category is the Native Wildlife Carers Grants, and these provide financial assistance to groups and individuals who are registered members of a wildlife organisation involved in rehabilitating and releasing orphaned, sick and injured native wildlife, including koalas, within the Brisbane City Council area. The funding was used for a range of projects, including the purchase of aviaries and materials to accommodate injured native birds, an intensive care unit where orphaned and injured flying foxes can be treated, and consumable items for caring and releasing animals. While the first round of the Native Wildlife Carer Grants and Cultivating Community Gardens grants closed yesterday, I'm pleased to advise that the Sustainability Grants and Environmental Grants will open in October. Further information about criteria and eligibility are on Council's website, and Council's officers are available to assist the groups through every step of their application. Mr Chair, I'll leave further debate to the Chamber.
Is there any further debate? No further debate. We move to the vote on the Environment, Parks and Sustainability Committee report. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Councillor Toomey, City Standards Committee report, please.
Thank you, Chair. I move that the report of the City Standards Committee meeting held on Tuesday the 23rd of August 2022 be adopted.
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved by Councillor Toomey and seconded by Councillor Adamant that the report of the City Standards Committee meeting dated Tuesday 23 August 2022 be adopted. Councillor Toomey.
Mr Chair, during the E&C Committee debate on item A, Biosecurity Plan, Councillor, forgive me, first time I'm saying it to the record, Shuranga Nathan, indicated that contractors in the area were spreading seeds. Could I recommend that the council forward those examples to the Chair of City Standards for investigation? Thank you. Mr Chairman, our committee presentation last week was on the Compliance Coordination Unit, also known as a triage team. The CCU is an area of council that delivers improved community outcomes through responding to community issues by recording, triaging and allocating service requests. The CCU provides education and protects the environment, community safety, health and wellbeing of all residents. as well as building trust with the Brisbane community. I would like to thank the officers for all the hard work they do, often in situations of high tension and emotion. They are council's front line, and we are very well represented by the wonderful work they do. We didn't have any petitions, Chair, so I'll leave the debate to the chamber.
Thank you. Is there any further debate? No debate. We move to the report on the City Standards Committee report. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Councillor Howard, Community Arts and Nighttime Economy Committee report, please.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I move that the report of the Community Arts and Nighttime Economy Committee meeting held on Tuesday the 23rd of August 2022 be adopted.
Seconded.
Thank you. It has been moved by Councillor Howard and seconded by Councillor Landers that the report of the Community Arts and Nighttime Economy Committee meeting dated Tuesday 23 August 2022 be adopted. Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Before moving to the committee presentation, I would just like to talk just about a few things that have been happening in our beautiful Brisbane through this last week. And of course it was Children's Book Council Week, and Dreaming with Eyes Open was the book that was chosen for this year. And each year since 1945, the Children's Book Council of Australia has brought children and books together right across Australia through our schools, our public libraries, and I know I attended one of my local schools, and I know many councillors in the chamber have attended our Gold Star and Little Star reading, and it is fantastic to think that this is a great opportunity to allow us to encourage our young people to start reading very early. While we're talking about libraries, I really want to say a big thank you to Sharon Robertson, who left council after many, many years just recently, and we had a farewell for her which was attended by many of our librarians, and it was clear to see that Sharon had touched the hearts of many people during her time here with council. She's off to start a whole new career for herself, so we wish Sharon every goodwill for the future. We also, of course, had the wonderful Brisbane Fashion Festival, and I know that it was fantastic to see King George Square come alive with all of the wonderful fashions that were there. It was held from the 22nd to the 26th of August, and it is now the 15th year that the Brisbane Fashion Festival has graced us with their presence, and it showcases the very best local fashion designers, including leading industry names, homegrown favourites, and the brightest next-gen talent. And it really was, again, a fantastic opportunity to see our King George Square come alive and to have those wonderful fashions on display. I also want to mention one of the events that I attended on behalf of the Lord Mayor last week, which was for SWARA. Now, SWARA is something that not very many people...
Councillor Johnston, please. Really?
Shall I continue?
Yeah, please, Councillor
Don't be distracted. Look, this is the second time that I've visited, and it really is the most amazing group of people. And it was formed, it's to celebrate Founders Day, and the founders, of course, were the Pink Twins, Dorothy and Moya O'Brien. And it is still, we still have members of the O'Brien family who are members of the board. They have been operating for about, I think, 47 years. It said it was founded in 1975 by the Pink Twins, and it works to help families and communities. And underlining the Pink Twins' remarkable work was an understanding that many people with disabilities need a sense of value and a sense of belonging. They need relationships that are secure and not dependent on conformity. So it was fantastic to join with the wonderful SWARA people to celebrate Founders Day, and we had a fantastic guest speaker called Ahmed Kelly, and Ahmed is also nicknamed Liquid Nails for his tough as nails style of play. He is an Iraq-born Australian Paralympian, and his many achievements include 2 gold medals and a silver medal at the Tokyo 2020 Paralympics. He was an amazing young man, and I think that everybody there on the day truly enjoyed hearing his story and how he has overcome a great deal of adversity within his life, but a really wonderful human being that was there for that particular event. Councillor McLaughlin and I attended...
Point of order to you, Councillor.
Will Councillor Howard take a quick question?
Will you take a quick
Of
question,
course.
Councillor Howard?
Thanks, through you, Chair. I'm not 100% sure of the truth of this, but is it true that the Pink Twins started Swara by squatting an abandoned property?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
That's not... No, the story that I was told was that they in fact had a premises up at Spring Hill and were there for many, many years, and that their current premise was provided to them by the state government. Exactly, yeah. So, look, I think that they've come from a family that was quite a benevolent family, and one that supported the twins in their desire to help others, and that continues today. As I said, the O'Brien family are still part of the committee, and in fact were present last week to help with the celebrations. So Councillor McLaughlin and I attended the Reconciliation Queensland's relaunch last week, and as we know, BCC has supported the work of Reconciliation Queensland for several years through activities such as the Boundary to Boundary Street Walk. We are committed to progressing our reconciliation through our Reconciliation Action Plan, and it was great to join with many of the people who were there, and we recognised many folk on the night, and it was fantastic to see that there are people who are working with Reconciliation Queensland to relaunch and to provide that support that we're very happy to provide as well. I also attended Little Dreamers, which is a charity for supporting young carers, and Councillor Owen represented the Lord Mayor, and I just popped in because it is the first time that the young carers have held their graduation ceremony, and they held it here at the Museum of Brisbane. And I just want to say a big thank you to the Museum of Brisbane, but more importantly, a big thank you to all of those who have worked with the young carers. It was an amazing event to see, and they were so excited that they were able to hold the event at the Museum of Brisbane. I also attended the Young Writers Festival, which has been going for 25 years at the the Misdemeanor Restaurant in Rose Lane. Now, I have to tell you, I didn't know that Misdemeanor was down there in Rose Lane, so I was very excited to attend and find yet another evidence of our nighttime economy being alive and well. And what was even more fantastic was that this particular festival, which has been running for 25 years, held their launch here in Queensland. They're Newcastle based, but they felt that they wanted to make sure that they had a presence here in Brisbane, and so it was fantastic to join them on Sunday evening to do that. And also, while we're talking about Sunday, we had the QUT Dragon Boat race down at New Farm. Can I just say how fantastic New Farm Park looked on Sunday morning, and it was just brilliant that we had all of the QUT people, we had the dragon boat racing people who were so excited that we're able to use New Farm Park. They were very excited because it means that the boats were able to be seen because it's quite close to the river, and so they're very much looking forward to holding that again in the future. I then popped along to Sporty's Charity Bake-Off to support our trans community, and yet again we were absolutely thrilled to be able to join that community and have quite a bit of fun before I went off to the Holy Spirit Parish fundraiser, where our multicultural communities all joined together. We had an excellent MC who had us all dancing, every different type of dance there was, from all of the wonderful people that attend the Holy Spirit. So it has been quite a week in Brisbane. It's a fantastic opportunity for me to let you know all of the wonderful things that are happening in Brisbane. And I just want to turn to our presentation last week, which was Library Services and Digital Inclusion, and we had the manager from Library Services provide an update on our Library Services and Digital Inclusion. And in 2021, the Australian Digital Inclusion Index showed that Brisbane is performing above both the national and state averages in terms of its overall inclusion score. So the goals, of course, are access, affordability, and of course digital ability. So we heard about a number of the skills that are being promoted throughout our libraries, our Tech Connect the fact that we have an introduction to podcasting, which was quite handy because I did my very first podcast with Valley Hearts the other week, and I let everybody know that if they wanted to do more podcasting, they could pop along to our Brisbane Square, our Indooroopilly or our Sunnybank Hills libraries to learn a little bit more about podcasting. We have a new makerspace for adults and young people at Carindale Library, and Council's Tech Kids program is another wonderful way of us being able to enjoy our libraries, and I will leave further debate to the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Is there any further debate? No further debate. We move to the vote on this report. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Councillor Huang, Finance and City Governance report, please.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the report of the Finance and City Governance Committee meeting held on Tuesday, 23rd August 2022 be adopted.
Seconded.
Thank you. It has been moved by Councillor Huang and seconded by Councillor Atwood that the report of the Finance and City Governance Committee meeting dated Tuesday, 23 August 2022 be adopted. Councillor Huang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At last week, the committee presentation was from the Strategic Procurement Office to give a market update. It was a timely and informative presentation, given the very challenging external market conditions, which impact not only council, but governments, businesses, and households around the world. Supply chain constraints have increased the prices of a range of key inputs. Steel, concrete, and timber are literally the building blocks of our infrastructure, and costs of all of these commodities are increasing, and supply is very tight. The skills and labour shortage is also impacting project delivery and contractor availability. The Strategic Procurement Office is responding to these challenges to protect ratepayers and support continued project delivery. This includes the increased use of rise and fall clauses to share market risks with suppliers to ensure projects can go ahead and to not place an unreasonable risk burden on suppliers. We are also ordering materials further in advance and exploring new suppliers and market capacity, such as social enterprises. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Strategic Procurement Office for their important work, and I commend the report to the Chamber.
Thank you. Is there any debate? No debate. We now move to the vote on the Finance and City Governance Committee report. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Councillors, are there any petitions? Councillor Cumming. Mic on.
Two petitions. One is a, well, I think they're the same petition, but they're, one's an online petition opposing 27-storey development at Wynnum Manly, and one is a hard copy petition on the same topic. Thank you. I present those petitions.
Thank you. Mic off. Councillor Lyons.
I have one petition from residents at Mitchelton seeking a traffic calming project in the northern parts of Mitchelton.
Thank you. Any more petitions?
Mr. Chair, I move that the petition as presented be received and referred to the committee concerned for consideration and report.
Second. Thank you. It has been moved by Councillor Landers and seconded by Councillor Strunk that all petitions as presented be received and referred to the committees concerned for consideration and report. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. General business. Councillors, are there any statements required as a result of an Office of the Independent Assessor or Councillor Ethics Committee order? No one rising to their feet. Councillors, are there any matters of general business? Councillor Sri Ranganathan first.
Thanks, Chair. Just wanted to speak about an issue that's popped up in my area, which I think is a pretty significant social justice concern. I had hoped to be able to talk to Councillor Marks about it today, but obviously she's absent. Maybe it's something that Councillor Toomey can at least make a note of to look into, and I hope the Deputy Mayor will take an interest in this one as well, because I intend to go to the media about it if we can't get a resolution. I'm not going to mention the property address, but there's a property in Wollongabba. It's an owner-occupied home where the resident has been living there for quite a long time now, and she's a disability pensioner. She's had some pretty severe health issues. Her disability makes it hard for her to pick up, to make phone calls, and she doesn't use the internet, etc. A few years ago, council became concerned that the property wasn't being safely maintained, and after a series of investigations and back and forth discussions with various council teams, the council issued the resident a show cause notice to make the property safe. And here's where it starts to become a bit of a problem. The resident started to make repairs to the property, patch up holes in the floor, that sort of thing. And Councillor Toomey, I'm sure you've seen these sorts of issues before. Often we're talking about vulnerable residents who have difficulty maintaining their property. Basically, she's making repairs to the property. She's doing as well as she can. Part of the property has been deemed not structurally sound, and so the resident and her daughter aren't living in that part of the building at the moment. But the council has now proceeded with enforcement action, and they're taking the resident to court, and they want to fine her $5,000 because her own property is deemed unsafe to live in. Now, this is in a context where the resident is trying to save up the money to make repairs to the property, is trying to find builders who can undertake the work and get the materials to repair the damaged parts of the property. So we all know how difficult it is at the moment to get builders and to get materials. And here we have a situation where a disability pensioner is trying to repair her home, is trying to save up the money to pay for the repairs. And the council, in its infinite wisdom, has decided that it will fine her and take her to court. I believe the court date is 2nd of September. So I've tried to raise this with council officers. I only became aware of this on Monday. Haven't had my calls returned yet. I've had one staffer tell me that they'll get back to me, but still haven't heard back. I think this is a really poor approach from council. The logical thing to do would be to give the resident more time, to support her, to link in with services, to make sure that her property can be made safe. But instead what the council is doing is saying, look, you're a low-income disability pensioner, we're concerned your house isn't safe, so we're going to fine you $5,000. We're going to fine you $5,000 because we think your house isn't safe. And somehow that's magically meant to make the situation better. It's a really backwards approach from the council officers. I'm not asserting that the LNP administration has had anything to do with this. I think it's a series of poor decisions that have just been made at lower levels, and no one's thought to interrogate or cross-examine those decisions. But I do think this is a pretty serious misstep by the council administration. It's not right that a disability pensioner should be fined in circumstances like this. She should be supported to make repairs. And just as the council has recognised, oh look, it's hard to repair stuff at the moment, it's hard to get workers, it's hard to get materials, we'll give ourselves more time. The council should be doing the same thing to residents who are the subject of enforcement notices. I think there can be good reasons for council to issue enforcement notices for unsafe properties, particularly where property investors aren't maintaining homes and they're forcing tenants to live in unsafe housing situations. But that's not what's happening here. This is an owner-occupier home where the owner-occupier has lived there for a long time, and they personally feel safe in that home and they're avoiding the parts of the house that are no longer safe to live in. But the council is issuing fines and pursuing them through the courts. And I think that's a terrible misuse of council resources. I think it's terribly unfair to the resident. I think it's very disappointing that it's gotten to this point. I understand that some of the community services council officers have now been told not to engage with this resident because the council's taking her to court. So that means that other council workers have been told they can't support her anymore. I'm not 100% sure whether that's correct. I hope that's wrong, but it wouldn't be the first time that sort of thing has happened. So we have a resident who needs support, who needs to be shown care and consideration. And instead, the council's going with litigation, and I think that's really disappointing. So I don't know if the mayor or the deputy mayor are listening. I hope they'll look into this one personally. And in Councillor Marx's absence, I hope Councillor Toomey will at least take an interest, because this is an opportunity where council could very easily say, oh, look, we're not going to proceed with court action. We'll give the resident a few more months to repair her property and make it safe. And that would be a much better outcome putting people through the pain and stress of having to defend themselves in court because the council has decided that the resident is not maintaining their own property satisfactorily. It's just a misapplication of the way the rules were intended to work. I'll leave it at that, but if any councillors want to chat to me privately afterwards, I'm happy to talk further.
Thank you. Further speakers, Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Chair. I rise to speak about Alderman L.W. Green, the former representative for Ithaca Ward. If you haven't heard of Alderman Green, I'd be surprised. In fact, I think everyone in this chamber is well familiar with his name, even if they're not aware of it. Having been exposed to his legacy every Tuesday for chamber sittings, Chair, keen-eyed councillors would know who Alderman Green is. In fact, every Tuesday they sit under a plaque dedicated to him. You'll note that Alderman Green was killed in action fighting for Australia in Egypt on the 1st of September 1942. That's 80 years ago this Thursday. Because of the poignancy of this moment, I felt it important to put on record some of his history and that of his unit. While it was difficult to find much information specific to Alderman Green, I can tell you the story of the 2nd 15th Battalion, of which he was a part. The 2nd 15th Infantry Battalion was raised at Red Bank in Brisbane on the 1st of May 1940 as part of the 20th Brigade. The battalion did its basic training there and then did 3 months garrison duty in Darwin. At the end of 1940, the 20th Brigade, as part of the 9th Division, sailed to the Middle East via India. It arrived at El Kantara in Egypt at the start of 1941 and moved to Palestine for desert training. They racked up some miles in March, travelling throughout the Libyan desert to the front line near Mesa Brega, including Mersa Matruh, Bugbug, Tobruk, Derna, Tokra, Benghazi and Agadabia. The 2nd 15th moved to Gabel El Gira on the 27th of March and then Bache. German forces landed at Tripoli and were advancing eastward. It was involved in the withdrawal of British forces to Tobruk, referred to as the Benghazi Handicap. The withdrawal cost the battalion heavily. The commanding officer, second in command, and 154 men were captured at El Ghazala. The battalion moved to Hill 69 near Gaza, where it remained into 1942. In early July 1942, the Second World War in North Africa became critical for the British 8th Army, where Axis forces reached El Alamein in Egypt. Australia's 9th Division rushed from Syria to the Alamein area and held the northern sector for almost 4 months, while the British 8th Army reinforced under a new commander. The 2nd 15th remained there throughout August 1942. At this time, the atmosphere in the Middle East was tense, very tense. The Axis forces were gathering and literal storm clouds were gathering overhead. There was no doubt a battle of epic proportions was brewing. By the 23rd of August, the British staff expected that Rommel would attack in the moonlight period between the 25th of August and the 1st of September. And it had been decided that as an immediate counterstroke, a diversionary raid would be made by the 20th Brigade. At 10:20 a.m. on the 30th of August, that's 80 years ago today, Australian sentries found a British soldier who had escaped the Germans as a POW. He revealed vital information about the German defences. So it was that Operation Balimba was planned, where Australia's 2nd 15th Battalion was to launch a mini-attack against the Germans on the 1st of September. I think it's poignant that the operation was named Balimba. Not only did it have a local feel for a battalion raised at Red Bank, but it was also the name of a former Brisbane council in which a Brisbane alderman was serving. By 5:15 a.m. on the 1st of September, the infantry were out of their trucks and formed 1,000 yards ahead of their own lines and 2,500 yards from their objective. They moved off exactly on time with 2 companies forward on a 600-yard front, and they reached the outer wire of the enemy's minefield just before the artillery lifted. As a lowly private, Alderman Green would have been right on the front line, right in the face of the biting bullets and with shells exploding all around. Tragically, this was no mini-attack. The fighting was vicious, and sadly, nearly half of his battalion was listed as a casualty, wounded, killed or captured. As an example of the ferocity, I'll read a brief passage. Corporal McLaughlin led a section that came under fire from an enemy outpost on the left. He bayoneted 3 men in this post and then, taking a submachine gun from a wounded man, attacked a second post and killed 4 of its occupants. He next attacked another post 200 yards ahead, killing 4 Germans with grenades, and then, having no ammunition left, assaulted 4 Germans using his Tommy gun as a club. One of these men attacked him, but he knocked him out with a kick and disposed of the rest with a grenade. You can see how tense the fighting was. In Operation Balimba, on the 1st of September 1942, 140 German prisoners were taken and estimated 150 were killed. The 2nd 15th Battalion lost 39 killed, 109 wounded and 25 missing. Alderman Green was one of 183 casualties in his battalion that day. We have only one national flag, which was first flown in 1901. Through you, Chair, to Councillor Cook, you once asked if the Australian flag was a hill worth dying on. Well, Alderman Green and the other 38 Australian soldiers died on a hill for our flag and for our country. Hopefully, from this point forward, people in this place will see and appreciate the plaque on the Chamber's western wall with renewed understanding and a greater respect. I respect Alderman Green's service and I thank him for his sacrifice.
Thank you, Councillor Mackay. Are there any further speakers in general business? Councillor Strunk.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I want to rise to speak on a couple of events that happened over the weekend or from last Friday and through the weekend. The first, of course, is Legacy Week, which is commenced on Sunday, of course, and goes through for the rest of the week. And I encourage all councillors and anyone watching to invest a little bit of a pin, lapel pin, or anything else that they sell at the kiosk where the Legacy team is out there raising much-needed funds. Now, I didn't really have a full understanding of what Legacy what the Legacy teams do and the work they do with the families. But I attended what they call a backyard assist Legacy event on Friday, and met up with a group from Legacy. There was probably about 7 or 8 actually from Legacy, but there are also a large contingent of Army personnel from the Inaugura barracks that were in attendance. And what they were doing, of course, was they were helping bring the garden, which was quite overgrown, because the lady who resides there, of course, is a fair age, and she's not able to keep up with the quarter-acre block, which is quite a big-sized block. But they were there going through it systematically and taking out those plants and trees, mostly palms, right, that she could no longer care for, and they were bringing it into some sort of a they were making sure that the garden was a much easier garden to look after. Again, I didn't really have a full understanding of how this work has been happening over the years, of course, until you talk to a couple of the Legacy people, and they tell you that they've been doing this work for, well, Legacy Week actually as an appeal, of course, started in the 1940s, but Legacy came out of World War I actually, as far as a project, and again, I didn't have a full understanding. So, but evidently at the moment they're looking after 43,000 partners and family of veterans who served this country and are no longer alive. And so it's really good to see that someone's out there looking after the families. And these Legacy people are really absolutely charming people to talk to and to deal with. I mean, you could just see everyone was smiling, you know. Even the Army contingent was out there as well. They just couldn't speak highly enough of the work that Legacy is doing, and it was just an absolute thrill to actually be there on Friday to see what was actually happening. The second item that I wanted to speak about as well is in regards to the a citizenship ceremony that took place at the Karawatha College. Brisbane Karawatha College. And it's not within my ward, but one of my team volunteered to help out for the catering. And so she came back and told me who was there and put together some notes, which I very much appreciate. It was the first citizenship ceremony in all of Australia to be hosted by a Muslim organization, and it was the first Islamic school to actually act as host for the ceremony. So it was a first, and I think that deserves it to be talked about here tonight. Janeeth Dean, which is who was one of the main drivers behind the ceremony being undertaken at the Islamic College. Janeeth is a descendant of the first 5 Muslim families that settled in Brisbane. She is a retired secondary school teacher, a volunteer community worker. She is the director of the Muslim Charitable Foundation, trustee of the Holland Park Mosque, president of the Queensland Multicultural Council, co-founder of the president of the Queensland Muslim Historic Society, curator of the Queensland Muslim Museum, and board of director of the Islamic College of Brisbane. One very busy lady. There were 100 people that were sworn in at the events. Dr. Jim Chambers, federal member for Logan, and the Treasurer of Australia, was the presiding officer. James Martin, MP for Stretton, of course, was there as well, and there was many other representatives from other organizations that came along to witness the swearing-in ceremony of 100 of our newest citizens. I'd like to also commend Councillor Kim Marks for organizing the plants for the ceremony. Now, it was outside of her ward, but when she heard that that none of the plants, that they needed some of those plants for the participants or the people that were being sworn in and their families, she stepped into the breach and made sure the plants were available. There was people from approximately 36 countries that took part in the ceremony, and I just wanted to raise that tonight because it was a first in Queensland and Australia in regards to a ceremony that was undertaken by a Muslim organization at a Muslim school here in Brisbane. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further speakers in general business? Councillor Cumming.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Mr Chair, I wish to speak briefly about the passing of a prominent citizen of the Winner Manley ward and another Green, Mr Paul Green. Paul was a prominent rugby league player and then went on to be a very successful coach. He coached the Wynnum team to premierships in the state league competition in 2011 and 2012, and he also coached the Cowboys, the North Queensland Cowboys, to their one and only premiership in 2015, when sadly they beat the Broncos, but it was a great game. And Paul's born and bred Wynnum bloke. He was only 49 years of age when he took his life, and sadly left a lovely wife, young children of 13 and 9 years of age, and elderly parents of, I think his dad's in his 90s and his mum's in her late 80s. So it was all very sad, but around about 1,000 people attended the event, and that's why I was late for council today. Sorry, I should put that in as well. And I didn't even stay for the wake. So, Paul was went through Wynnum High, got 990 TE score. He'd done some courses at Harvard. He was a keen pilot and had a pilot's licence and a helicopter pilot's licence as well. He was doing other work developing, I think they called it high performance courses for the local developer BMD. He'd done some work on there, and so he could turn his mind to anything, and as I said, very successful, very intelligent. The service was very, very well done. His wife spoke, the two children spoke. which I found outstanding, that they were able to, they spoke very well. The local head of Barton's motor vehicle company in Wynnum, Mark Beach, spoke very well, as did Mick Power from BMD, and also a number of Paul's siblings. He was one of 5 children. He was youngest of 5, and 3 of his siblings spoke as well. So there was about 1,000 people there at the Cougar Oval, Wynnum Manly Leagues Club, and it was a great tribute to Paul. He was character-wise, he was a bloke. He was always liked to be at the party, you know, what do you call it? Life of the party, that's it. And he was also fancied himself as a singer, a karaoke singer at that time of night, but he did it on a regular basis, and they had actually a clip of him singing, and he wasn't too bad, I thought, quite decent. But very sad that he would take his own life, and I think it just shows the importance of mental illness, the importance of groups that set up hotlines for people to ring up if they've got problems, if they feel there's no future for them. And I think it's, I thought I should mention to the chamber that that's where I was, and that it's an important issue, and I think we all should take on to a certain extent, and I think we all do, supporting those types of issues in our wards and across the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Here. Is there any further general business? No further general business. Councillors, we move to the urgency motion that was moved earlier by Councillor Johnston, and the debate continues. Is there any further debate? Councillor Huang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Excuse me, Councillor Huang, just before you start, I should read it out because it's been circulated, just so everyone's aware of what the debate is. This was circulated by Councillor Johnston. Thank you for sending that through. The motion is that the Lord Mayor provide a list of all existing and new sandbag collection locations in Brisbane. Sorry to interrupt you, Councillor Huang. The floor is yours.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise to speak in relation to this motion. The Lord Mayor has addressed this matter earlier in his report. As councillors are aware, that the Jersey Review made recommendations in relation to sandbags, which council is actioning along with every other recommendation. I wish to provide additional details sourced from the council website, which may be of interest for other councillors in the chamber. Sandbags can be used to reduce the impact of flooding on your home or business. Sandbags will not stop the water entirely, but can reduce the amount of water entering your premises. Brisbane City Council provides pre-filled sandbags to residents and businesses in the council area. From October to March, pre-filled sandbags are available for collection 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Sandbags are provided outside this month when there is severe weather predicted. For example, in higher than normal high tides and heavy rainfall events. Sandbags can be collected at the following locations: in Darra South Depot, 38 Shamrock Road; Lota Depot, 58 Herbert Street, Lota; Morningside, Balmoral Depot, 9 Redfern Street; Newmarket, SES Depot, 66 Woolston Road; Zilmia North Depot, 33 Jennings Street. As further locations are confirmed, the website will be updated. Given this information is publicly available and is ready on the council website, the motion is not required.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Cassidy.
Well, the motion clearly was required because the Lord Mayor wasn't able to give an answer. And he ranted and raved for 7 minutes. The first 7 minutes of his E&C contribution saying that apparently we didn't want to hear the answer to where these additional sandbag locations would be, but still didn't provide them. And Councillor Huang has read verbatim, I was just following along with him, from the council website, which was last updated on the 8th of March 2022. That was the last time the council website was updated. So how regularly is it going to be updated? The recommendation was clear that more sandbag locations were required, and that should be delivered on by the 31st of August. Well, today is the 30th, so will this be updated through you, Chair, to Councillor Huang tomorrow? the website? I assume that's what he meant, Chair, when he said this will be updated when new information is provided. And if that's the case, if Councillor Huang is saying the website will be updated tomorrow with the additional locations, why didn't the Lord Mayor just tell us where they were? And this is a real issue. This is a real issue. I spent 3 days at the Zulmia sandbag depot, at the sandbag filling machine over that weekend in February, the last weekend in February 2022, where they had one single sandbag machine which was not able to keep up with demand. There weren't enough council staff available to run it anyway, because the breaks that those staff needed to take meant that for half an hour or 45 minutes, or in between a shift changeover, an hour went by without any sandbags being produced whatsoever. Now, I know the Lord Mayor went to a depot and got some photos on that weekend in February, on the last weekend in February in 2022, with a sandbag machine. And of those locations that Councillor Huang read out from the website, I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor, coming through you, Chair, I don't think Loader has a machine. I think they were delivered to Loader. So then there's 4 locations with a machine. I know Zulmia, which is for the entire northern suburbs of Brisbane. There's the Newmarket. No one from Bracken Ridge or Aspley or Castledine or Fitzgibbon or Bald Hills that's flooding, or Brighton or Sandgate or Deagon or Shorncliffe or Boondall or Zulmia or Tagum or Aspley or Geebung that's flooding, or Wavell Heights that's flooding, McDowell out there and Banyo. They're not going to Newmarket. They're all relying on the Zulmia depot, which was cut off pretty rapidly in floodwaters, where there's one machine located. So the review was very clear, and that was one of the main parts of my contribution to the De Jersey review, was that the suburbs north of Zulmia are cut off from that depot. They need additional sandbag locations. In the past, council officers, the regional coordinator for asset services, as it was then known, organised for truckloads of sandbags to be dropped to Brighton in these events. Well, they're no longer allowed to do that. Those people don't exist. Those officers didn't even have any equipment to close roads, let alone organise trucks to deliver sandbags to communities that were cut off from these locations. So the recommendation is very clear, that more locations across the city, across the suburbs that make up Brisbane, need to have access to sandbags so we don't have a repeat of previous disasters. It's like lessons haven't been learnt. And I presume that this website will be updated tomorrow. Why we couldn't be told today is beyond me, and the Lord Mayor has the gall to say that, well, we're playing politics on this side of the chamber when he is clearly playing politics with the flow of vital information when it comes to flood preparedness. Now, we know that there are 2 officers in council in that City Resilience branch who are tasked with disaster preparation. Lord Mayor clearly doesn't like to hear that they've only resourced 2 positions, and the one that was previously resourced prior to this year was paid for by the state government, by a grant from the state government. So council didn't even allocate 1 cent to fund positions within council to help communities prepare for disaster. Now, after the February disaster, that has finally been boosted 100% to 2, but it's just not good enough. When we're getting on to the 7th month since this flood disaster, and we're having the Lord Mayor either not know what's going on, or does know what's going on and is keeping it hidden from half the chamber at least. So I certainly hope, if the LNP aren't going to support this, that we can refresh this web page tomorrow, Councillor Huang, through you, Chair, and find these additional locations so our communities can be prepared.
Thank you. Further debate? Councillor Johnston.
Yes, thank you to those who've contributed to the debate. And it's interesting, isn't it? The Lord Mayor couldn't be bothered to be here for the debate of this motion today. The Chair of Infrastructure Committee, who's the chairperson for the Flood Recovery Task Force, couldn't be bothered to be here for this debate today. And the Deputy Mayor is not in the chamber either. I think it is disgusting that this council is hiding and obfuscating when it comes to flood recovery. Tomorrow, on the 31st of August, Paul de Jersey, who went above and beyond to get his report out early to Brisbane City Council, has 12 recommendations that are due to be reported upon and completed by Brisbane City Council. 12 of them, and they range across a whole lot of issues to do with preparedness, planning, resilience. One of those recommendations is about addressing the problems with sandbag delivery execution during February 22. Now, I know from feedback from local residents in my ward that they could not get to Darra to get the sandbags. Roads are cut out my way very early, and then for days you can't move around the ward. So it's not possible to get to Darra. I know that the Newmarket depot was closed, and there were massive traffic jams, and there were no sandbags available during the extreme weather incident. I don't know necessarily about the others on the north side, but I know that the only spot you can get a sandbag in the southern suburbs of Brisbane is at Darra. In the eastern suburbs there is Morningside and Lota. It is beyond embarrassing and shameful that the response to a motion based on a recommendation by the former Governor of Queensland, Paul de Jersey, that a backbench LNP councillor is sent out here to read verbatim what is on the council website. That is the same information that was found wanting in the February 2022 flood that Paul de Jersey has said to council you must address by the 31st of August. That is tomorrow. When asked about it today in council by Councillor Cara Cook, the Lord Mayor went on the attack. He attacked Labor. He said they didn't care. He went for 5 minutes in his question and did not answer the question about whether any additional machines have been purchased and where any new locations are. We know now there are no new machines and there are no additional sandbag locations. The same defective locations for a whole heap of reasons, demand, flooding, lack of bags, whatever it is. There's a whole heap of reasons for this. We know that council's response to a flood, if one happened tomorrow, is exactly the same as it was 6 months ago. That is not good enough. The Lord Mayor has stood up in this place and publicly promised that all 37 recommendations from the De Jersey report would be actioned. Well, here we are on the eve of when 12 of the 37 recommendations are due. Here we are, and at the first hurdle, the LNP administration has epically failed on something as simple as working out where they could put some extra sandbag locations for residents to get to. Now, after he realised his mistake in failing to answer the question, he then, in his own speech, also went on the attack and claimed there was some super Saturday sandbag day coming up in September. That's 3 weeks away. He hasn't told anybody about that. And the only reason we know that is because another councillor asked him a question, and after he was embarrassed publicly at his lack of knowledge and understanding, he then got some information and stood up and said in his report, yeah, there's going to be some super sandbag thing. Well, we know, because it's already been the case since as long as I've been a councillor, that you can go during the summer months and get a sandbag from those depots. That's not the issue. The issue is that when people want to get them, they have to be able to get to those locations to collect the sandbags. Now, most people don't have, you know, a huge empty garden shed or empty garages or whatever it might be to store 10 cubic metres of sandbags to protect their houses. The only reason you really need sandbags is in an emergency. So most people don't go and get them in advance. Now, certainly we will all, I will, and I already have yesterday, encourage people to go and get some. However, this council needs to take on board the De Jersey Review recommendation and provide additional locations that are easily accessible. Evacuation centres are supposed to be clear tomorrow as well. Hey, the Lord Mayor was asked a question about that and can't answer. Here we are, 6 months into the floods, and 12 report recommendations are due, and the Lord Mayor cannot answer any of the questions. This council was woefully prepared back in February. They ignored all the advice from me and other councillors that were flooding, that it was flooding. Even after telling the Lord Mayor and senior council officers it's flooding in my ward, they denied it was flooding. This council does not understand the task that is ahead, and they have failed at the first hurdle. We now know, it's very clear, there are no new sandbag locations. It will be the same old business as usual by this LNP administration, and that is simply not good enough. They must act on the De Jersey report recommendations. They have until tomorrow to do so. Otherwise, the glossy marketing saying you've delivered, which you put out after 2011, which clearly was false information at that point, will again be false as of tomorrow. And it's not just this one recommendation, there are 11 others due tomorrow. So I think that the failure of the Lord Mayor to be present, the failure of the Deputy Mayor to be present, the failure of the Flood Task Force Recovery Chairperson to be present demonstrates what this administration thinks about flood recovery in Brisbane. They can't even be bothered to turn up, be part of a debate, and to look at how to improve our responses to flood preparedness by having additional sandbag locations. Now, I'm pretty certain that among us, we could easily find at least one other location in each of the regions in Brisbane, at least. And there are council facilities where sandbag locations would be useful and could easily be done. Even if they're a pop-up location, which, as Councillor Cassidy mentioned, truck them in and deliver them. But this administration is not even prepared to look at an innovative response like that. What they have said is information from the 8th of March 2022 that is exactly the same information that was available the day before the floods as the day after that floods. Go to the same old depots doing the same old things and get your sandbags from there. That is not good enough. This is the second flood that I have been through in this community, and after 2011, Council failed, fundamentally failed, to undertake flood recovery and resilience and preparedness actions. It centralised command and control, and it made flood recovery extremely difficult for communities because we were shut out of any council involvement. This time round, Paul De Jersey has given council a blueprint which, to be fair, is pretty light on, like it wasn't the most detailed report, but it did have some useful practical things in it, of which finding some additional locations for sandbags seems like a pretty quick win, right? Remember the good old days? I mean, there's still the odd councillor here from when I started. Back then you'd get a few quick wins on the board and you'd be like, yeah, we're doing X, Y and Z, and the harder things we're looking at, they're going to take a bit longer. This administration can't even be turned up to the debate. And their answer to a recommendation is, we'll do exactly the same thing that we did 6 months ago before the floods, now 6 months later. That is not good enough. The LNP administration should be ashamed of themselves, and this shows very clearly why this Lord Mayor and the LNP Council do not deserve to be running this council administration. They must be voted out at the election in 2024. If they're not going to be accountable for flood recovery and actually actioning the recommendations of the De Jersey report, they do not deserve to be leading this council. They do not deserve to be in this administration. They are tired, out of touch, and clearly are not interested in doing the work on flood planning and recovery.
Councillor Johnston, thank you. Your time has expired. We now move to the vote on this motion. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. The noes have it.
Division.
Division called by Councillor Cassidy and Councillor Johnson. Ayes to the right, noes to the left. Please ring the bells.
They're really going to vote no to sandbag locations. Like, seriously.
Councillor, can you turn your mic? Oh, it is now. Thank you. No, it is now. Thank you, Billy. Close the bars. Clerk, can I get the result, please?
Mr Chair, the noes have it, the voting being 7 in favour and 13 against.
Thank you. Declare that motion lost, and I declare the meeting closed.